Thomas Paine, Sam Adams, Benjamin Franklin. These men spoke up for what they thought was right. From their courage came such documents as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. From their willingness to speak what was sometimes unpopular but right, we enjoy such liberties as freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and freedom of religion. There are those who still wish to oppress our freedoms, and there are still patriots willing to stand up and defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Men like Zeb Bell, who honor our founding fathers and what they stood for. It's now time for Zeb at the ranch, speaking up and defending your freedoms. Brought to you by Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers and all of the other great advertisers on the program. And now, Zeb Bell.
Farmer John lived on a quiet rural highway, but as time went by, the traffic slowly built up at an alarming rate. The traffic was so heavy and so fast that his chickens were being run over at a rate of 6 a day. So one day, Farmer John called the sheriff's office and said, "You've got to do something about all these people driving so fast and killing all my chickens." "What do you want me to do?" asked the sheriff. "I don't care, just do something about those crazy drivers." So the next day, the sheriff had the county workers go out and erect a sign that said, "Slow school crossing." 3 days later, Farmer John called the sheriff and said, "You've got to do something about these drivers. The school crossing sign seems to make them go even faster." So again, the sheriff sent out the county workers and they put up a new sign that said, "Slow children at play." That really sped them up. So Farmer John called, and he called again and called every day for 3 weeks. Finally, he asked the sheriff, "Your signs are doing no good. Can I put up my own sign?" The sheriff told him, "Sure thing, put up your own sign." He was going to let Farmer John do just about anything in order to get him to stop calling every day to complain. Well, the sheriff got no more calls from Farmer John. 3 weeks later, curiosity got the best of the sheriff, and he decided to give Farmer John a call. "How's the problem with those drivers? Did you put up your sign?" "Oh, I sure did, and not one chicken has been killed since then." "Hey, I've got to go, Sheriff. Thank you. I'm really busy." Well, the sheriff was really curious, and he thought to himself, "I better go out there and take a look at that sign. It might be something that we could use to slow down drivers." So the sheriff drove out to Farmer John's house, and his jaw dropped the moment he saw the sign. It was a spray-painted sign on a sheet of wood that said, "Nudist Colony." Good morning, everybody. Here comes Kate Smith and God Bless America, followed by a patriot with our Pledge of Allegiance. Good morning. That's the great voice of Kate Smith, and God Bless America. Good morning, everybody. Zeb at the Ranch. I'm Zeb Bell with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, and all 7 great locations, along with some of our great advertisers, including Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More at 459 Overland and Burley, and Western Waste Services, always at your disposal. Get on the road service today. Call Kelly and the crew, 734-6969. Maybe that's what I need to do to slow traffic down on Highway 30. Nudist Colony. Good morning, Gina.
Until you get the person that actually stops and pulls in and says, "Well, where's the nudist colony?"
You know, I guess maybe we could hire, there's a little old lady down the road about 5 miles. She's about 83. Maybe she doesn't really care, so maybe
That would be funny, I dare you.
You don't ever want to dare me.
Good morning, sunshine. How are you?
I'm good. Can you possibly turn what you send me up a little bit? I'm having a hard time hearing you and everything. I don't know why.
Not a problem. I can do that.
I appreciate it. No, everything's going well, and today is going to be a nice warm day. Tomorrow's even going to be warmer. We'll have Michael Rogers on in just a minute, but do we have a pledger?
We have Rotten on for the pledge.
All right. Here goes Rotten. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Dal, stay out of that nudist colony.
Colony, or is your wife?
What's that?
Are you going to be the nudist colony, or is your wife?
I think that's kind of a personal question. I'll just let you drive by real slow and see what happens. See you later. Thank you. Oh, my goodness sakes, it's time for the weather forecast. And the weather is brought to you by some really new friends of ours. Cheney Flooring and Home Design, 1228 Oakley Avenue in Burley. Look for their blue door. And they've got a slogan that says, where your home design needs are aisles apart, not miles apart. We're going to tell you more about Cheney Flooring and Home Design right after Michael Rogers' weather.
Well, another day of sun. In fact, you're going to have a lot of sun, as I stated yesterday. The next weekend, going into next week, into next weekend. The day, as far as the temperature is concerned, is going to be in the 80s, but when you get to Thursday, the temperature is in the low 90s, about 91. So enjoy the day, enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you got.
There you go, MichaelRogersWeather.com. Thank you very much, and brought to you by our new sponsor on the weather, Cheney Flooring and Home Design, 1228 Oakley Avenue in Burley. They've got all the hardwood, the laminates, the vinyl sheeting, vinyl plank and tile, carpet cabinets, natural stone, Oakley stone. My goodness, they've got all the countertops for you. Believe me, they can meet or beat any price on flooring. Free in-house consultation. They want to work for you. Call them today, 678-6945, or stop in and see our friends Kyle and Whitney. They'd love to help you at 1228 Oakley Avenue in Burley. Cheney Flooring and Home Design. Look for their blue door. They're waiting to serve you. Oh, my goodness sakes. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for tuning in this morning. We got a full plate with a lot of interesting people. But I think what we're going to do is a couple of commercials, and then we'll have a tip of the coffee cup to some real good folks, so stay tuned for that. Hey, Darrow's Cleaners, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley, and I've been telling you they've got those gift cards over there, and what a great gift. You know, like somebody's having a birthday, somebody's having an anniversary, whatever the case, they would fit in anywhere, anytime, to give them a prepaid gift card to Darrow's Cleaners to get rid of all the rumply-crumplies and have them looking good. That's right. Best cleaners in the universe, Darrow's Cleaners, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. You stop in and see those good folks today. Somebody else that I'm very, I love to brag about because they do such a wonderful job, and that's SafeLink Internet. They've been around for 16 years, and believe me, everybody that knows SafeLink Internet can tell you fast, reliable Internet, and they've got a track record to prove it, and all you have to do is call them at 677-8000. That number again, 677-8000, Idaho's number one choice for SafeLink, or I should say for Internet services, SafeLink Internet. We've been with their program for a long time, the best, and service is fantastic. SafeLink Internet. You call them today. All right, give us a jingle. But first of all, it's time to have a little tip of the coffee cup. And Gina, could we have that slurp, please?
That is so good.
There you go. A tip of the coffee cup to Dennis and Carlene Bunn. Carlene, better known as the Water Lady, taught Moses how to part the Red Sea. And also, we want to say good morning at tip of the coffee cup to Kathy Krause over at the great Four Paws Bed and Bath for the dogs and the kitty cats. They got quite a deal going on. We'll be talking about that in a little bit. So a tip of the coffee cup, and hope they have a great day. Wow, what is going on with this pathetic left loony administration? They are going out of their way, and every parent, every aunt and uncle, everybody that's served in our military should be absolutely irate and mad at this administration for blaming our troops and saying that they were ragtag troublemakers in the Bergdahl platoon. This is unbelievable to me. that the New York Times and others that are really trying to shelter this administration would go after our troops, and they were saying, oh, they were wearing cut-off T-shirts, and they were wearing bandanas on their head. You know what? They did some research on exactly where all this garbage came from, and these soldiers out in 100-degree-plus temperatures with all their Army equipment and their uniforms and everything were given permission, I understand, by their superiors to basically strip down to like T-shirts, and they were digging the perimeters of their camp. And that's where some of the loony left is getting their information, saying they're ragtag troublemakers. These are soldiers for the United States military. The United States military. And some of our media has the audacity and the stupidity to question the integrity of our soldiers and question the integrity of soldiers that are stepping forward and saying in a very straight and forthright fashion that one of their own basically deserted. And this administration is going after them, making them look like the bad guys. Psychotic despots, that's what they are. And I'm absolutely going to stand up and say our military doesn't deserve this. The left-wing bigots of the New York Times and other loony lefts, they need a good slap in the face. And even our own Times News, after that despicable editorial they had in there on Sunday, basically blaming the right wing, basically blaming the Republicans, basically going after the media that is a right-wing conservative talk show media, and blaming us for all the problems, blaming us for the attacks on the Bergdahl family, blaming us for the attacks on Bowe Bergdahl. They brought it on themselves. They brought it on themselves. And I am sick and tired of seeing people step forward and offering excuses for the truth. And that's the bottom line. I just can't understand how in the world the left-wing media and aiding and abetting and sheltering the Obama administration are going to last for the next 2 years doing this for a president that is absolutely pathetic in his leadership qualities. Now, here's something else that really bothers me, and I want to get into this for this morning because I want your opinion on this. Congress in general is, at the current time, not very well respected. However, we have laws, and we have a chain of command as to how things should be done. And we have a report right here in my hand from Newsmax back in Washington, D.C., and a report written by Greg Richter that shows emphatically that the White House let 90 people in the administration know that Bergdahl was going to have a deal for 5 bad guys, but not one person in Congress knew. You talk about an absolutely pathetic situation to where our senators and congressmen knew nothing. And the administration said they were afraid of leaks, and they let 90 of their own people know. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, so stay tuned. Don't forget that Valley, and I want your calls on this. Don't weaken. Sit there. Get on the phone. Don't forget the Antique Tractor Show that's going to be going on at Valley-Wide Home and Ranch. My goodness, they're going to have that Antique Tractor Show. I ought to take my tractor over there. Well, you talk 1949. Yeah. Tractor Show is going to be on June 20th and 21st, and the customers are going to have a chance to vote for their favorite tractor. And boy, oh boy, this is going to be a fun deal. They're going to have an anniversary sale going on at the same time, both days from 11 to 1, and they're going to have burgers and everything. Wow. And burgers are going to be just for $1, benefiting the local FFA chapter. All of this at Valley-Wide Home and Ranch, 910 South Oneida in Rupert. And don't forget, all the 4-H supplies are there. All the feed needs are there. Everything's there for the farm, the home, and the ranch. Valley-Wide Home and Ranch, 910 South Oneida in Rupert. Want to also mention, come on, give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Ramsey Heating and Electric. Hello, Keith. Hello, Rita. Hello, everybody. Don't forget Ramsey Heating and Electric, the farmer's friend, and they know that you have limited time. You jumped off the tractor. You're headed for town. Holy smokes, you need something. Well, just call. Just call them. 678-0459. I'll say the number again. Write it on the dust on the dash of the pickup if yours is like mine. 678-0459, and your order will be waiting for you at the counter. You can't beat that with a stick. No way. You give them a call. Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley, 678-0459, where they provide warm winters and cool summers. All right, your thoughts. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. The House Armed Services Committee Chairman, Buck McKeon, called the news about 90 administrative officials knowing about the Bergdahl and the swap with the Taliban leaders. And he says it's very, very disturbing. And McKeon, I want to mention to you that there is a bipartisan hatred on what happened with the Obama administration. McKeon is a California Republican, and he told CNN News he wants to get an exact number of those who knew and their names. And he said, my question to them was, if you don't know who knew, then how could you, if a leak happened and the sergeant had been killed, how could you go back and find out who leaked? Then, down the line, a California Democrat by the name of Representative Adam Schiff said that it didn't sit very well with those of us who were listening at a briefing, Schiff said, so that the news that so many administration staffers knew of the decision ahead of time was disturbing. We're going to see what's happening on this. Honestly, I think that we're seeing a great big chasm being dug. We're seeing a hole that is being dug every day. And whether it started with Fast and Furious, whether it went on to Benghazi, whether it went on to the IRS, whether it went on into looking into personal reporters' family accounts and their business, whether it was anything to do with this story or others that have scandalized this administration. Step by step, inch by inch, this administration is digging its own grave. And as you read through things and you talk to people like I do every day back in New York City, there is a huge outcry around the United States by people that said, wait a minute, we voted for Obama for hope and change, and boy, right now we're hoping it doesn't change any more to the worse. It's absolutely one of the most criminal, one of the most deceitful, one of the most lying administrations ever in our history, if not the most. What are your thoughts? Give me a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Denny's Restaurant, 611 Overland in Burley. You can give gift cards there, too. Did you know that? You can go in and enjoy a delicious meal, and then when you're leaving, you can say, hey, I'd like to buy 2 gift cards for Aunt Martha and Uncle Fred. Wow, what a gift. Aunt Martha and Uncle Fred are going to get hungry, and they're going to love either a breakfast, lunch, or a dinner at Denny's Restaurant. Oh, my. And they've got such a great menu for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and believe me, you're going to get filled up with really good food, and the service is fantastic. It's the home of Zeb's Lunch Bunch, and by the way, our next lunch bunch is coming up on the 19th, next week on Thursday. Denny's Restaurant, 611 Overland in Burley. You stop in and see those good folks today. Really nice people. Hey, by the way, quickly we'll do this, and then it's time to take some calls. Father's Day is right around the corner, and Mad River Laser at 700 South Oneida in Rupert has buck knives for Dad. Dad would love a buck knife. Yes, he would. And if you buy a buck knife and mention my name, you get 10% off. And they, at of course, Mad River Laser, will give you free laser engraving. Oh, yes, Nicole and the crew, they are fantastic. Mad River Laser, 700 South Oneida in Rupert, wishing you and yours a very happy Father's Day. Also, maybe Dad likes books like I do. I just love good Western books, man. I love about the Old West. Well, they've got books, thousands of books over at the Book Plaza, 222 West 11th Street in Burley. You stop in, see Colonel Dale and the rest of the crew at, of course, the Book Plaza, and they're waiting to serve you at 222 West 11th Street in Burley. Happy Father's Day. What's the matter? Did everybody sleep in this morning? Come on, give me a jingle, 436-2244-1-866-927-4587. I got to ask Gina about this real quick. Before we get into a more serious story about illegal immigrants, Gina, did you see the new fashion craze that's hitting the East Coast in New York and Boston and all those big city places? Listen to this. They're called the short suits.
The short, I can already see this. Are guys wearing them?
Yeah, they're a really, really tight pair of shorts that hit you just above the knee, and then they are tailor-made with a sports jacket, a vest, and then you wear a white shirt and a tie. And nothing, in my opinion, could possibly be uglier. And then, of course, the knee-high black socks and the shoes.
Actually, I just Googled it and I brought up some pictures, and there is actually a guy wearing knee-high socks that are black.
You know, I saw that on TV this morning, and, you know, they're saying they're trying to, quote, make life more comfortable for the executives in the summertime. They may be making life more comfortable for the executives, but they're driving the rest of us nuts. That's crazy.
On the ladies, it looks good. On the guys, not so much.
No, I agree with you. On ladies, it would look very, very nice and feminine, and it would look a little different, you know. But I can take it for the gals, but for guys to wear that stuff, you would think they're a little light in the loafers, wouldn't you?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, there's a guy here wearing loafers. On the images.
On one of the images?
Uh-huh.
I rest my case, Perry Mason.
Yes.
Okay.
I would wear one because on the ladies they look nice. Guys, please don't do that.
Oh, not here. This would set back Magic Valley 10 years.
It would, too.
Yeah.
And you've got a phone call.
All right, we'll take it. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Zeb.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you want to make these executives all so nice and comfy, then our poor boys can go to hell, have to wear their full body armor and all that stuff in 110-degree weather and working. Horse pucky.
Al, where do they get off? And quickly answer this because I've got a hard break at the bottom of the hour. Where do they get off, like the New York Times and everything, saying they're ragtag troublemakers because they were down to like a ragged T-shirt and some sweat bandanas on their heads? I can remember vividly pictures from Korea, Vietnam, etc. This is not anything that's derogatory against the troops. In the humid and the very tense conditions of heat on the front lines, you know, what's wrong with what they did?
Well, nothing. And what makes me mad is some go-ahead calls into that general that was in charge of the bases over there and said, have them men put their uniforms on.
Yeah.
You know what I'd have told that guy?
Not on the air, you don't.
Because that's damn ridiculous. Them guys are supposed to be halfway comfortable, you know, working out in that 100-degree weather, shoveling holes and all that stuff. What is these damn politicians thinking anyway?
Well, they're not. And this is what the left, this is the left in their high fashion, trying to turn everything and deflect it away from the actual problem and deflect it away, any kind of problem away from Barack Obama. I'll stand behind that statement, and we've seen it already, Al, with our little local amateur newspaper, the Times News.
Oh, that was a good one this morning for that Alexander.
Oh, my.
He would grow up and learn what in the hell he's talking about.
You know, what bothers me the most about what he said, and I'm running real late, but I want you to respond to this. It's almost like he's given a free pass to anybody that wants to basically sanction the Taliban, basically sanction Muslims, and basically give them a free pass. This is America. We need to be proud of our troops and our flag and not someone else.
I know it. I wish I could get him just about 30 minutes to 2 hours on a flight line or someplace in 110-degree weather and say, here, you wear your full uniform and you learn to do what you're told to do instead of sit there and write your damn lies.
I agree. Al, thank you for your call. I appreciate it. Thank you. Caller number 2, I'll be right there in just a few minutes. Please bear with me. I've got to get Travel Loop Supply on here. And don't forget, you heard what Jim McCall said last week on Thursday. He did. He said it right here on the air. You go in and mention my name, and you get a large percentage off of what your purchases are. I mean, a large percentage. In some instances, 50% off. You better get in there today. 1050 West 203 south of Hayburn. Travel Loop Supplier. Call them. They deliver the goods. 438-8730. That number again, 438-8730. All the bolts, metric and standard, the bolt bins, oils, tools, everything. Travel Loop Supply. You give them a call today. Quickly, it's time for the Capital Press Ag Minute. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Today's Ag Minute brought to you by the Capital Press, the West Ag Weekly.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is again proposing to list a plant found only in southwestern Idaho as threatened under the Endangered Species Act. The state of Idaho is continuing to fight a federal listing. Idaho rangers say listing slick spot peppergrass as a threatened species could cause significant harm to many ranchers in southwestern Idaho because grazing could be restricted in habitat areas. Slick spot peppergrass is a desert plant with tiny white flowers found in Ada, Canyon, Elmore, Gem, Oahe, and Payette counties. The USFWS proposal is the latest development in a decade-long struggle by Idaho, which has developed its own plan to conserve the plant.
For more agriculture news and information, turn to the West Ag Weekly, the Capital Press, and CapitalPress.com.
Hey, don't forget, next Monday, we're going to be over at Snyder Surplus for their grand opening. These are such nice people. We're looking forward to it all the way from 8 in the morning until 11. We're going to be broadcasting live over there next Monday, June 16th at 112 South, 200 West of Rupert. Oh, my goodness. Food cooked by the Rupert POW MIA, and they've got new merchandise, friendly service, brand new store. Please come on over and see us next Monday, June 16th at Snyder's Surplus. Going to be great. I thought before the break I heard another call coming in, and I'll check with Gina and she can laugh at me.
There's no other call.
You mean the cow did not moo? I told you I'm lacking sleep.
It is taking effect. You are hearing things that aren't there.
I got to tell the audience while we're waiting for some calls to come in, and have you ever done that with the sleeping pills?
Yes, but I like the melatonin chews.
Oh.
They have little melatonin gummies, but still you kind of wake up groggy. Mm-hmm.
Well, it was already about 11 o'clock or a little bit after last night, and I decided that I needed some sleep for the last 2 nights. Evidently, my motor's running, but it's not in gear. And I better get some sleep, so I took a sleeping pill last night. And that dude, it took about an hour for it to really kick in. And then I get up at 3:45, and my system was, you ever go play, what do they call the game, the ball, you shoot the ball and it goes up and hits all the different things. I can't think of what
Are you talking basketball?
No. You know where you pull the hammer back and let the ball go? I can't think of the name of those games. Pardon me? Pinball. That's what I felt like this morning trying to walk out of my bedroom.
And the hallway were the flippers?
Yeah, you should see the crutch marks on the wall.
You've got a phone call.
All right, I'll take it in a minute. Don't forget Silver State Stampede, Nevada's oldest rodeo. The Silver State Stampede comes into Elko July 10, 11, and 12, and it's going to be a ripping good time again for 2014. Western trade shows, tri-tip dinners, Old West bronc riding, of course, PRCA rodeo. I mean, wow. And that trade show they've got there is absolutely fantastic. And then the Ring of Fear, where local cowboys go head-to-head with one big bull. Last one standing is the winner. This is really a lot of fun. Elko's Nevada's Silver State Stampede at the Elko County Fairgrounds, July 10, 11, and 12. Don't you miss it. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Jed. I just tuned in, so I don't know if anybody has mentioned this or not, but I heard Hillary Clinton say that she thought Benghazi was just the minor leagues, and she was ready to play for the major leagues, and that even made her want to run. even more. So I don't know. I guess the major leagues would be having 40 people killed instead of 4.
You know, what you just said, I thank you for bringing this up, because I did see the interview. I did take notes on the interview, and there was another part of what she said that really bothered me, and I know as sharp as you are, you picked up on it too. They were talking about Ambassador Chris Stevens and his death, and her words were, Ambassador Chris Stevens was there at his own choosing. It was almost like she was saying, well, listen, it's not my fault. It's not anybody's fault in this administration. He wanted to be there in Benghazi. That's his fault because he stayed there or he was there. Did you pick up on that?
I did not hear that part. Nope.
Well, it just sickens me. It sickens me that this administration, and Hillary is a part of this administration and was, they will do anything to whitewash the truth and turn it so that they come out like shining knights of armor. Hillary, I honestly don't think, and did you hear the question that was asked about her accolades and achievements as Secretary of State? And honestly, she couldn't come up with anything. She deflected to the president.
Let's see. What did I do while I was there?
Yeah. You're 100% right. Now, honestly, I'm going to ask you, and this sounds very sexist of me to say this, but as a woman, could you possibly vote for Hillary Clinton?
Oh, I would no more vote for her. I'd rather vote for the Campbell Soup Kid. I just think that they are putting so much on her, and I don't think she can do it.
Well, tell me.
She could have, but I think she's lost it.
Tell me, though, honestly, this is another part of that question. Name 2. Give me 2. That should be easy enough. Qualifications that she has to sit in the Oval Office.
Well, she's a citizen of the United States.
Yeah.
That's kind of stretching.
You're being a little vague, my dear.
I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of scary, isn't it?
Well, you know, everybody will say, well, look at all the expertise and information she garnered while she was married to Bill, and still is, but you can call it a marriage, I won't. While Bill was in the White House, she has no qualifications. She has no experience. Tell me one thing she did as Secretary of State except fly around and get fatter in her pantsuit. I know that I'm going to take heat over that, but it's the truth, and you know it. And she looks frumpy. And quite frankly, I don't think she's got any accolades or anything that points to the fact that she should be president.
Well, and you know, I don't care about her outward appearance. It's the inside of her heart that I worry about. And I don't think she has it.
You know, right there, I really applaud you, because this woman, from everything I've read, now you can dispute this if you wish, she is a cold, calculating, very introverted person.
Well, and I might be as well if I had to have dealt with a husband of hers, but you can't then take that and try to do whatever you think you have to for the United States.
Yeah.
I don't know. It bothered me with that, and it bothered me with the fact that since October, there's been 47,000 children come across the border in Texas.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up, too, that this morning this problem is so exacerbated that you and I, as taxpayers, we are paying the bill not only for them to be here, but we're also paying for transportation costs. We're paying to have them get on airplanes in many instances and leave the Texas border and be flown to Arizona. Governor Jan Brewer is beside herself. She's livid with what the federal government is doing, literally dropping these people off on street corners in Phoenix. This is a horrendous mess caused by Obama and his push for immigration reform and buying more votes.
Well, that's what the fellow on the news, it was Mark Rubio, said today, that he was afraid this was setting a precedent, that people are just going to continue to do this, and that these kids, these babies, are being taken to military units as well.
Right.
Trying to find something to do with these poor kids.
But wait a minute. God bless you for your statement, and I can tell you're a humanitarian. But think about it just a little bit differently. Why would any parent anywhere in the world, or grandparent, send kids to a foreign country other than for selfish means of knowing that if they get up here without parental advisement, guess who's going to be allowed in the country next, free of charge, on our dime, under this amnesty that Obama's trying to push?
Well, that's what they said, that they were trying to push the kids across because they have it in their heads that once they're here, they're not going to get sent back.
There you go. And they're working this bubble right now. And I talked to Frosty Woolridge this morning back in Denver, Colorado. And Frosty's going to have a special report on this Thursday morning at 10:30 right here on our program. He, 5 years ago, predicted that this was going to happen and that they would be coming up from Central America and causing this problem. And there's another problem connected with these kids I'm going to talk about in just a minute, but I got to do a commercial. Thank you so much for calling this morning.
You're welcome. Thanks.
God bless. Have a good day. Very nice lady right there. Very nice lady. There is another problem, and it's really serious, and we're going to talk about this in just a minute. Right now, I want to talk about Berry Equipment and Rental. Oh, my goodness, 3 locations to serve you. Addison Avenue West in Twin Falls, South Lincoln Jerome, and their new one at 159 West Highway 30 in Burley. And they've got all the Bobcats. Oh, my goodness. Eli sent me a note and says, we've got Bobcats all over the place. A great lineup of Bobcat excavators, and believe me, they are the industry leader. Lease payments and great financing are available, and they also have the most spacious and comfortable cabs in the business. All you have to do is just schedule a demonstration today with Nick over in Burley or good old Eli in Twin Falls. They can help you. That is the Bobcat inventory at Berry Equipment and Rental, Addison Avenue West, Twin Falls, South Lincoln Jerome, and 159 West Highway 30 in Burley. Berry Equipment and Rental. All right, here's what's worrying me. And we are going to talk about this with Frosty exclusively with a special report that he's going to call in on Thursday. But these people that are coming through, these kids on buses, unattended, and in quarters down in Texas along the border and in Arizona where they don't know where to go with them, and they're just kind of piled up in various rooms and in detention areas. My goodness, it's terrible. They don't have the necessities like food, water, or diapers or anything else. But the problem that is going to be exacerbated are disease problems. We are watching many of these people come across the border with severe problems, diseases that we thought had been eradicated, and they're bringing them through because they don't have a vaccination program. We're seeing severe, and it's gross to even talk about on the air this morning, but we're seeing and hearing about severe head lice problems, and it's going to be communicable into our society, into our homes, into our schools. Polio is another disease. And then I look out in the audience and I question the sanity and the integrity and the value of parents that don't immunize their kids. What are they thinking of? The problem is they're not thinking at all. And our immunization programs have really stopped and thwarted these diseases for many, many years. But now, thanks to Obama, and I am going to say it that way, they're bringing them right smack dab to our front door. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, Zeb, you're correct about that. But if you look back in history about the voting base, it started with Jimmy Carter and free Social Security to anybody that comes to the United States from a communistic country, Cuba. And that's where my Social Security go in, your Social Security went, and all of a sudden, bada boom, bada bing, Jimmy Carter got presidency. And they're handing out the welfare project, which comes out of my pocket, your pocket, and everybody, tax-paying Americans' pockets. They're doing a voting base. And if they get these illegals in here from other countries with welfare status, free stuff, out of my ass pocket and your ass pocket, there's a voting base that grows exponentially.
I can tell that you're upset about this, and I am too. But, here, let me just say this, and please do not be offended the way it comes out, because I'm not criticizing you at all. I'm glad to hear you call in. But for 5.5 to 6 years, with Frosty Woldridge in Golden, Colorado, we have been preaching and preaching and preaching about the devastating effects of illegal aliens coming into this country. And also preaching about all of a sudden deluges of kids coming first, and then the parents following, and the Obama administration saying, oh, well, come on in, you got to take care of the kids. Why weren't people listening? Why weren't congressmen and senators being aware? Why weren't the public, like you, me, and everybody else, outraged and telling these people to stay away? We cannot afford this mess.
It has been going on since World War II, the end of World War II. It's been going on. And everybody has turned a blind eye, a deaf ear to it. It is not a new mechanism to get a voting base for the liberal, communistic, socialistic based people.
Yeah, but wait a minute. I agree with you.
Brand new.
No, I agree with you on what you said, but I think you will also have to agree with me that right now the problem is exacerbated tenfold because of Obama basically pushing for amnesty, and they know they've got a bubble of time to get here, and they're going to do everything they can to bring in their voting machine, their populace, through illegal aliens coming into this country. It's bigger now than ever before because of this administration.
Amnestia has been going on since the first Bush administration.
But
and
not.
Everybody thought that the amnestia was going to happen during the first Bush administration.
No, I'm not arguing that point. All I'm saying is that right now, sir, right now the problem is such. We're on the border in Arizona and Texas and other areas. These people are throwing their hands up in the air. Governor Jan Brewer doesn't know what to do. I mean, my goodness, they don't have the resources. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the environment right now to handle these people. And they're just absolutely saying, what do we do? And the Obama administration is absolutely pushing this program so that it can cause and wreak havoc and eliminate any border system whatsoever.
I agree with you, Zeb, but right now it has met the boiling point. The zit has ready to pop, but it has been going on forever and ever and ever. And everybody's. I don't like the Obama administration. Don't get me as an Obama supporter by far. But right now, it has reached a boiling point, and now everybody is recognizing it.
Yeah.
Rupert, Idaho is the what do they call that? The no-tell, don't say amnestia zone.
Mm-hmm.
What do they call that when they come here and you can't ask their documentation papers?
Don't ask, don't tell, yeah. I've got to do a weather forecast, but I really appreciate your outlook on this. You're spot on. I mean, you are absolutely well informed. I do not understand how much more the American public is going to take without realizing...
I know what they call Rupert. They call it the... heck, it slipped my mind again. Anyway, you come to Rupert and it's a no ask, don't tell thing.
Right.
It's like it's a domain where it doesn't really matter where you're from. We don't care. We'll just pay for you.
Well, I appreciate your call, sir. Call me again because I tell you this problem is not going to go away. Thank you, sir, very much.
Bye, Jeff.
Thank you. Good call, and he's knowledgeable. He knows what's going on. How much more, honestly, are you going to take with money just going right out of your billfold to pay for people that are coming in here illegally and taking up residence on our dime, getting the medical help? They're going to be going to school before too long. We're paying for that on our money. And the disease factor is another very, very insidious problem. I've got a weather forecast with MichaelRogersWeather.com. I'll be right back.
Well, another day of sun. In fact, you're going to have a lot of sun, as I stated yesterday. The next weekend, going into next weekend to next weekend. The day, as far as the temperature is concerned, is going to be in the 80s, but when you get to Thursday, the temperature is in the low 90s, about 91. So enjoy the day, enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you got.
There you go, MichaelRogersWeather.com. Thank you very much. Hey, by the way, Four Paws Bed and Bath, 370 West, 200 South of Rupert, having a kids' canine camp this Saturday, June 14th from 10 to 4. We had a really nice visit with Kathy about this yesterday. And the cost is $45 for one child, half price for the second child in the same family. Instructions on how to groom the dog, obedience classes for the dogs, not the kids. Games, lunch, all kinds of goodies. Going to be a fun day on Saturday at Four Paws Bed and Bath, 370 West, 200 South of Rupert, Kids Canine Camp. Don't you miss it. All right, calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. What is the matter with our border system? I heard somebody on the news the other night, they were kind of the man on the street interview. Oh, we shouldn't have any borders. We should all live in harmony and sing Kumbaya and make chocolate s'mores. And this country is going to hell because our borders are just going. And when I look around at these pictures that I have in my hand right now this morning, showing rooms, wall-to-wall kids, and very few adults, and knowing that these are nothing more than little pawns in a chess game by the Obama administration to force an immigration reform program, it sickens me. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Hi, Zeb. I called earlier when I was talking about the sanctuary city of Rupert.
There you go. There you go. I lost it, too. I couldn't remember.
I forgot the name. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I was at a loss of words because you get me so frustrated and everything. But anyway, it's not the Obama administration. It's the bubble right now. And it's been going on for decades. But right now, what I need to say is a sanctuary city, and there's many across the nation. It's not just Rupert.
That's right.
You show up and you're undocumented, which I call them illegals or wetbacks or whatever you have. It is illegal to be in the United States, but it's illegal to ask them their status and driver's license or ID or anything. And I have to have ID on me legally to walk down the street.
Absolutely.
And if I'm a white guy and I'm walking down the street drunk and they hit me up, I have to have ID. And it's illegal to walk down the street in Rupert, Idaho, the United States of America, to have no ID.
Right.
Now, if I'm a Mexican and they hit me up, I'm racial profiling and I can't ask them for ID.
Okay, but wait a minute. We know what the problem is. Now let's do something to discern an ending to the problem or a solution. What is it? I mean, we have an administration now that wants to exacerbate the problem. We've had previous administrations that want to exacerbate the problem. So, okay, stop right now and tell me, what are we going to do? The cat's out of the bag, and it's a lot easier to let a cat out than it is to put a cat back in.
There's a many a bus and a many a train heading south, and economically it would be more feasible 5 years down the road to round them up and head them out, send them home.
I can't argue that because I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that. We're losing money whichever way we turn as American citizens and taxpayers.
No matter which way we turn, I'm paying 39% of my income for whoever, whatever, but and economically standing, and every mathematical mind across the United States says, hey, this is where the diseases are coming from. This is where our economic downfalls come from because they're sucking from our monies. Send them home.
Absolutely.
In 5 years, we won't see that.
I got to run, do a commercial. Thank you again for calling back. I do thank you. Thank you very much. You know, what's getting me, it says right here, over the Memorial Day weekend, about 400 migrants. They said migrants in the story. They refused to say illegal immigrants. They go migrants. They didn't say anything about them skipping the border and coming here illegally. They didn't say anything about coming in the dead of night. They didn't say anything about having clandestine moves across the border so that nobody could catch them. They call them migrants, and I take issue with that. They say about 400, I'm going to call it, illegal immigrants from Central America were flown from Texas to Tucson. 400 people. Now, I fly more than most, and I know plane tickets have absolutely escalated in their costs, and the services have gone way down. So we, you and I, and that gentleman that called, and everybody else opened our checkbook up, and we flew, at our cost, 400 illegal aliens from Texas to Tucson, where they were processed by the Border Patrol and then turned over to custody areas. We paid the money. We are not very bright. Don't forget your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. All 7 locations. All 7 locations serving you with the very best of tire buys. All the tread designs for all your vehicles for your safe driving this summer. I mean, and they've got easy credit plans available, 4 different plans available for you to get in there and get the services that you need. Front end alignment, shocks and struts, the best in brake service, along with batteries. I mean, and of course, all the tires. I mean, these people really care. Lane and Rupert, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, Mike and Buell, Mike and Jerome, Twist family over in Paul, John on Pole Line in Twin Falls, and my old buddy Randy on Overland and Burley. They care. They provide the best in service, and they are your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Good first hour. Thank you for all your input. Next hour, we're going to be talking to Alki Mariluch down there in Elko, Nevada for the Silver State Stampede. And then at 9:30, don't miss Chris Plant. He is a regional coordinator for the National Organization for Marriage. You don't want to miss that. It's going to be interesting. I'll be back in 6. When you don't get enough sleep at night, the eyes have a tendency to go boop and they're shut. Anyway, good morning. Zeb at the Ranch. I'm Zeb Bell with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you. And don't forget, too, some of our great advertisers, and they include Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More at 459 Overland and Burley, and our friends at Western Waste Services.
From the canyons of the Snake River and all across southern Idaho, we're always the Georgia shores of Western Waste Services. We care about our community, our resources, and this great land. Western Waste Services is lending a hand, always at your disposal. Western Waste Services.
Thank you very much, and don't forget they've got the Go Minis, the portable storage units for contractors, real estate agents, on-site, off-site storage. Oh my, they're perfect for moving, for renovations, for storage. Check it out today, the Go Minis. Call them at 734-6969, Western Waste Services. They are always at your disposal. Give them a call today, 734-6969. And, ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you, too, that every Thursday we have a program called Gardening for Idiots. It's named after me. I'm not a very good gardener, but Miss Vicky is at Vicky's Country Garden, 185 South, 600 West of Paul. Oh, my, tune in 912. She'll tell you all about how does your garden grow, and she'll tell you about it, too. Vicky's Country Garden, 185 South, 600 West of Paul, 438-5663. Last but not least, before we get our guest on the line for this segment, I want to remind everybody about Hanson Mortuary at 710 6th Street in Rupert with my very, very dear friend Joel Heward and his family. They will give you and your family the attention that you need at a time that's extremely trying. When there's the passing of a loved one, they are there to serve you with the highest ethical standards with unquestioned integrity. So please remember the number and call 436-5636. Once again, that number, 436-5636. 5636. And to make the arrangements, you don't have to travel all the way to Rupert to their office. Call them, and they'll travel to the many towns and churches around this area. Hanson Mortuary, Rupert, Idaho, 436-5636. Well, it's coming up next month in July. It's hard to believe that we're already starting to talk about a fun event, and that's the Silver State Stampede down in Elko, Nevada at the Elko County Fairgrounds. And here's an old boy that can tell us all about it, a good friend of ours for many, many years. Alki Mariluch, how are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm good. How are you doing, Zeb?
Fantastic. Well, now, tell us a little bit about this year's Silver State Stampede. What's cooking down there in Elko for the Stampede this year, Alki?
Well, we're going to have on Thursday, July 10th, we're going to have a kickoff party. It's a barbecue, and then in the Old West bronc riding, we're going to have about 30 Old West bronc riders go on Thursday night, and they'll have a Calcutta on those guys, and then on Friday we start at 6 o'clock with mutton busting, and starting the rodeo at 7, and at 6 and 7 on Saturday as well. We expect some pretty top-notch PRCA riders there for the Stampede.
And, you know, Alki, the thing about the Silver State Stampede, you really get a lot of top-notch contestants there. I mean, we've had the Wright brothers there. We've had all the top-timed eventers. I mean, this rodeo really is one of the very best in the wilderness circuit, isn't it?
Oh, it's really good. And, you know, with our contractor, the Kirby out of Utah, they do a bang-up job. They've got some really good stock, and there's a lot of excitement there, and people really seem to enjoy it.
Well, now, Alki, is there any truth to the rumor that this year you're going to enter the Ring of Fear?
No, I don't think there's any truth to that rumor.
Well, now, tell everybody what that is.
Not looking.
Tell everybody what the Ring of Fear is.
Well, it's right after the last bull rider goes. They put 6 circles out in this pen out in front of the grandstands, and one guy stands in each circle, and then they turn a bull loose that is not very happy to see humans, and it gets pretty exciting. The last person that stays in the circle wins a pretty good chunk of money, and the crowd all stays around for that because it's exciting.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. The crowd stays up in the grandstands where they're safe, and these 6 guys, they're out there standing in those little bitty circles. The Ring of Fear, it's really quite an event. And, you know, if people want to take in, Alki, this trade show, you folks down in Elko, especially right there at the fairgrounds, you put on a trade show to where they can find all kinds of interesting cowboy artifacts, can't they?
Yeah, there's vendors from all over, and they have, you know, some old Western stuff, some artwork, some new, you know, stuff for packing, you know, for hunting and things like that. It's quite a show.
Well, now, if people want to go down there and they want to dance after the rodeo, have you got a place where they can kick up their Justin boots a little bit?
We do. All 3 nights, they'll have music. The first night is going to be a DJ, but down at the Cowboy Bar, it's right there at the fairgrounds. And on Friday night and Saturday night, they have a band, and so they'll play music, and people will dance and have fun for quite a while.
All right. Now, the main thing we're trying to tell people is, yes, this is middle of June, but don't put it off because it's coming up on us, July 10, 11, and 12 in Elko, Nevada. What about tickets, Alki?
That's the one thing right now. I don't have the paperwork in front of me, and I don't remember offhand what the ticket prices are this year, but it's a pretty inexpensive event to come to. I'd be guessing if I told you. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's all right. I've got a telephone number here. I've got a number here from Information on Tickets, and it's 775-934-1456. Or, easier yet, they can go to the website at silverstatestampede.com, right?
Right. And, if there's any Old West bronc riders, aspiring bronc riders up there, they need to call and get signed up. It's our Old West bronc riding this year is going to be double points for that Western WSSRA Association, the Old West Rodeo Association, and we're expecting to have that fill up early with some pretty top-notch guys.
Well, Elkie, why don't you explain some of the rules about that Old West bronc riding? It's a lot different from actually the PRCA rodeo bronc riding. Explain that to us.
It is. The riders ride a regular stock saddle instead of an association bronc saddle that the PRCA guys use. So they're harder. It's harder to ride a horse that bucks in one of those saddles because they're just a working saddle, and they don't have to mark a horse out like in the rodeo. They just have to stay on, and these horses they buck pretty good too, and there's they can use two hands or one hand, whatever they need to get the horse covered. A lot of guys have the ropes on the saddle. They'll hang onto their rope. They'll use shafts, and they'll kind of fan the horses with their hats and things like that to make it look wild.
Kind of like an old Charlie Russell painting from the days gone by, right?
It looks just like that. It does, a lot of them.
And these horses that are coming in special just for this Old West bronc riding, is old Wally Blossom going to bring them in again?
Yes, he's bringing the horses again this year, and he's got some horses that they see people probably one time a year, or maybe 2 times a year, and that's just to come in for these kinds of bronc riding.
Well, you might see guys going. You might see guys going over a 4-rung fence. You might see guys going through a 4-rung fence. This is going to be a wild event, isn't it?
Right. And I've seen it all. I've seen them do it all, and those horses, they'll get in the air and squeal and spin, and yeah, it's a good event.
All right, now, Elkie, what about if people, I'll go back to that number again, 775-934-1456. If they want to make plans to spend the weekend in Elko, they better get their tickets and they better get their lodging lined up right now, hadn't they?
Yes, they should. We have a lot of hotels in Elko, but you still need to plan ahead and get a room.
Okay.
Because it'll fill up.
I know it will, and we're going to be bragging on this all the way up to the event. Maybe we can get you back on the air again for an update. But Elkie Mariluch, boy, I tell you, I'm looking forward to seeing you again this year. We're going to be down there for the Silver State Stampede on July 10, 11, and 12 at the Elko County Fairgrounds in Elko. And Elkie, God bless you, man. We'll be talking to you in the next couple days.
All right, you take care.
All right, thank you so much for being on the program. There's a friend of mine. I've known Elkie for years and years down there in Elko, Nevada, known the family, and his brother was a top-notch bullfighter years and years ago, and we worked together, but by golly, they're making plans for the biggest and best, July 10, 11, and 12, Silver State Stampede in Elko, Nevada. Going to be a lot of fun. Calls are welcome and appreciated. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Father's Day's right around the corner. Here, stop. Look, see, peek around the corner. There it is, Father's Day. And the Goodie Shop at 133 West Main in Burley says, hey, come by and treat Dad to a goodie basket, or you can select one that's already done. You can build your own, and they've got special Father's Day mugs filled with candy kisses and brownie treats. Oh, this is a good deal for Dad. The Goodie Shop, 133 West Main in Burley, 647-0106. You contact the Goodie Shop, wishing your dad a very happy Father's Day. And Redder's Showcase at 2611 Overland in Burley. Great place to shop for Dad. Take Dad along. Just say, okay, Dad, come on, we're going to go shopping for Father's Day. Why, he can't say no. And go into Redder's Showcase. They got recliners, and they got with a lifetime warranty and best in the industry. Why, just go in there and say, Dad, we're here to make you comfy. At Redder's Showcase, 2611 Overland in Burley. You stop in and see them today. All right, give us a jingle on the landline, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Like to hear what you have to say right now. We've got a little time for some more calls, and so give us a jingle. Let's see what else. Gina, the stories. Are you there, by the way? I forgot to ask. Maybe you left the room.
Nope, I am here.
All right, the stories that are coming out, I don't know if you get a chance in the morning or sometime during the course of the day to just basically pick up a newspaper or a group of newspapers and just go through and pick out the headlines and the sub-headlines and everything that's going on in the news right now as far as this Bergdahl and the trade for these 5 Muslim terrorist killers and all the variations of all the stories and everything. And I said on Monday, and I'm going to stand behind this, I literally, and I wish you could see this on the camera over there, I literally have about 6 to 7 inches of papers that I've cut out from the Wall Street Journal, the USA Today, various other regional newspapers. I mean, this story is not going to go away anytime soon, and I think it's got enough legs, Gina, that this is the story. This is the scandal that possibly will do the most damage to the Obama administration.
I really have to agree with you on that one. And, just going through some of the headlines and the sub-headlines, 80s and 90s told of Bergdahl before us, documentaries that help explain Bergdahl. There's just a lot of information that we don't know that is continuing to come out, and I don't think it's going to look good for the Obama administration at all.
My buddies from my generation that went to Vietnam, I get a little emotional thinking about the ones that I lost over there, especially a couple of brothers, Jerry and Larry Smith, that died over there in Vietnam. They didn't walk away from their units. They stayed there. They did their job, but unfortunately they didn't come home. And I look at their situation, and then I look at the coverage today. And, Gina, this is what bothers me. There seems to be a softening, a whitewashing, any terminology you want to make. Oh, well, the pressure of war probably made him walk away from his unit. And they try to minimize what he did as far as leaving others in harm's way and just going away. That is absolutely detestable to me.
Well, you know what? If he couldn't have handled it, why did he join? You have to go through rigorous training, mental and physical, to be deemed fit to do or, to be a part of our military. So if he couldn't hack it, why did he join?
He would have been better off going into the Peace Corps.
Yeah, something.
Yeah. And I heard a report, and you've probably heard this too, and this is not me. I only deal in facts that have been provided to me by major news organizations. There are stories out now that it has been said by major world news organizations, from Newsmax all the way to many, many others. I've got a pile of them here, about 1, 2, 3, 4, that Bergdahl had converted to Islam and was asking for a jihad against the United States. That's a pretty hard pill for me to swallow.
Yeah, especially if he's one of our military members. And some of the reports that I read said that he was actually learning the language while he was over there.
Yeah.
And talking the language, and he was not active with his fellow troop members. He was very alone and solitary, and just things aren't adding up with him.
Gina, you're a cool head because you've been a journalist for television and radio, and like I said, one of the prerequisites, and you and I have talked about this many times, I won't put anything on this program that I can't back up and stand behind. But when you think about it, and we have an American serviceman with all these reports about possibly walking to the enemy and providing information, these are still stories that they're searching out as far as 100%, excuse me, 100% on the collaboration and possibly calling for a jihad against us. A jihad against American soldiers is a very serious charge, basically wishing death and mayhem to anybody that doesn't believe in Islam. I mean, you're talking about a complete turncoat situation.
Well, and that coming from a fellow troop member, he's claiming jihad on his fellow brothers and sisters that he's supposed to be standing next to and protecting, just like they did him.
Yeah.
I find that irreprehensible. He shouldn't have been there. I mean, if he couldn't hack it, don't go.
But the whitewashing now, like what was in the Times News on the Sunday op-ed page, and many, many other papers saying, well, he just walked away. Gina, this is war, and this soldier did something that absolutely, in years gone by, would have earned him nothing more than a court-martial and a execution.
Yeah. And honestly, it might come down to that. You never know. It might come down to that. He still has to face military court, and we'll see what's going to happen there. You've got a phone call.
I'll do that right after this commercial. Let's Ride, Highway 24 between Rupert and Burley, open summer hours Monday through Saturday from 9 to 6. And believe me, they've got all the ATVs. You want to head up in the mountains? You want to see the great backcountry? Well, do it on an ATV, and I'm telling you what, they got them all over there, including the Can-Am side-by-sides, rebates and great financing. Oh, and they've got a service department over there that absolutely is phenomenal. They can take any problem you have and fix it. You better believe it. Let's Ride, Highway 24 between Rupert and Burley, where the fun is sold. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Jeb. I just want to say I, too, am a Vietnam veteran. But I would just like to know your thoughts on why is it so hard for people to accept the fact that he walked away? Well, why is that so hard for people to accept?
Let me ask you a question right there, sir. Let me ask you a question quickly, and I want to be really poignant about this. He walked away. You know, he walked away. He made his plans. He sent things home to his parents. He left things on his bunk. He made preparations. He walked away. I don't understand how much of he walked away that people can't understand myself.
He hung up.
Oh, I'm sorry he did. I wish he'd call back. You know, he brought up a point, though. He walked away. He didn't walk the other way to go to another camp controlled by the United States. He walked away in the direction of the enemy.
Yeah. And how could he do that?
Well, you know, I listened to some of the soldiers last night that served with him, and they were on Megyn Kelly's program the night before. And she was interviewing each and every one of them, and asked them their thoughts about not only Bowe Bergdahl, but also about the circumstances in leaving. And every one of them, it's safe to say, felt very betrayed by somebody that they would have stood up and given their life for.
And he should have felt that same way, but I don't, like you said, I don't understand why people are having such a hard time believing that he did walk away. This has happened in history before. People do walk away from their post for whatever reason, so it's not too hard to say or to believe that, and especially with all of the other facts that are coming out about his mental state and him learning the language and calling for jihad, it's totally plausible that he walked away.
But, you know, as news media people and having a talk show that's an opinion show, you've noticed this when you were a journalist on TV, too, that if you mention the facts and you report on the story, I don't care what it is, you are going to take the criticism that should be directed at the people that caused the problem, not the people that are reporting on the problem.
Exactly.
Okay. We got a commercial break, and then we'll have our next guest on the air. Stand by. Don't forget Cameron and Siemens Insurance. Hello, Dean. Hello, Todd. Life insurance, health insurance, retirement planning, employee benefits, all of this. And a lot of people say, well, I'll just put it on the back burner. I'll call them next week. Or I'll call them the first of the month. Well, I'll call them in the fall. Ladies and gentlemen, don't put it off. You don't know what's going to happen this afternoon, tonight, or tomorrow. You've got to make sure you're covered. Call them today, 436-4424, 436-4424, Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. Absolutely the best. Hey, by the way, we are going to be over at Snyder's Surplus, and that's going to be next Monday, June 16th, broadcasting live and direct for the entirety of the program from 8 to 11. 112 South, 200 West of Rupert. Don't forget, it's going to be a big blowout sale, and it's going to have the brand new location and business of Snyder's Surplus. They had a horrendous fire not long ago, and they've rebuilt. They've got all new merchandise, friendly service, new store. Come on in while we're on the air. Next Monday from 8 to 11 at Snyder's Surplus. You are going to have a good time. Oh, well, let's see. What else have we got cooking here real quick? I think we're going to go to the phone lines, and we're going to have our next guest, and that's Chris Plant. Is he ready to go, my dear?
Yes, he is.
Thank you. Looking forward to having this gentleman on the air for a good discussion here this morning. And we have the regional director for the National Organization for Marriage, and that's Christopher Plant. Christopher, nice to have you on the program. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
I guess I'm just going to succinctly and bluntly say how I feel about things. I think that our country is catering to the left. Our country is catering to absolutely chaotic destruction of moral values and family values. And it's so nice to hear somebody like you get on the air and talk about keeping marriage the way it should be between a man and a woman. There, I'll let you pick it up from there, Christopher.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the support. And you're absolutely right. This country is sliding more and more towards chaos and the rejection of family values and the rejection of marriage between one man and one woman, which is the bedrock of our society. Children need mothers and fathers. They deserve to be raised by both a mom and a dad, and it is the ideal place to raise the next generation. We're not just talking about feelings or individual commitment to one another. We're talking about that relationship, the family unit that builds each one of our towns, our communities, our states, and eventually our nation. And as we destroy that, as we see it redefined, our country slips further and further into chaos.
Chris, you don't mind if I call you Chris, do you?
Not at
all. Right. Why? Why is this happening? You know, when I look back, I'm a child of post-World War II. I'm 66 years old. I'm a grandfather. And why did this all happen? Was it the post-Vietnam era that really entered in kind of an anything-goes attitude? How did this all happen?
Well, you can take this all the way back, really, to the 1960s, and as we had the whole free love movement, and then you have the introduction of contraception. You have the introduction of no-fault divorce, starting in California, destroying the bedrock of marriage. First of all, that marriage is permanent. Second of all, that marriage is about raising children. And then you come into the 1970s and the legalization of abortion, and that children are no longer important, and we've murdered 50 million of them in the last 4 decades. This is a part of a process. This is a symptom of our nation turning away from the basic morality and the importance of marriage, family, and children. And it will continue in this way unless the people of America stand up, unless people who know and believe that marriage is a unique and blessed institution that is crucial for our nation, stand up and say enough is enough.
But you know, it's not as easy, and I'm not trying to minimize your words, Chris, but it's not as easy as what you portray it to be, because along that trail, there's going to be rocks and pitfalls, and these left loons are going to call you bigoted, they're going to call you a hate monger, they're going to do all they can to minimize and destroy you and me. How do we overcome that?
We overcome that by simply being courageous. And I agree, it is not going to be easy. I have had my share of names. When you said, can I call you Chris? I'm thinking, well, that's one of the nicest things people do call me in this battle. However, what we have to do is we have to be courageous. We have to take this country back. Right now, right now, the American people believe marriage is the union of one man and one woman. As hard as that is to believe from the narrative that the mainstream media portrays for us, even Politico, that left-leaning organization, found that 52% of Americans still believe that marriage should not be redefined. If you look at specific states such as Michigan, in that state, support for same-sex marriage actually declined over the last 12 months. The people of America, those who vote, the grassroots of America, the bedrock, the backbone of this country, believe that marriage is one man and one woman. It is a movement of elites. It is a movement of radicals. It is really right now only a movement actually of activist judges choosing to legislate from the bench and impose their opinions on entire states. America has not abandoned marriage, but a small percentage, a vocal minority, have been hell-bent on redefining it.
Chris, this administration, and on this program I'm blunt. I don't care. I'll step on anybody's toes. If they don't like it, they shouldn't be dancing. But this administration, I think, has been more hate-filled against marriage between a man and woman than any other administration. Would you agree?
I would agree that this administration absolutely has led the lawlessness charge. They have abandoned the rule of law. This administration, first by President Obama coming out and saying that he is in favor now of redefining marriage, his whatever evolution has completed, or I guess, and then his attorney general telling state attorney generals that they can ignore state law, that they can ignore the vote and the voice of the people and not defend marriage amendments. This is complete and utter lawlessness being led by this administration, and it has trickled down across this nation. You can look at state attorney generals who have followed Attorney General Holder in not defending marriage laws, such as Kathleen Kane in Pennsylvania, just to name one. Then you can look at county clerks across a myriad of states who have said, I don't care that my state's marriage law says marriage is one man and one woman. I'm going to issue same-sex marriage licenses. This is lawlessness that has been led by this administration, and they continue to champion that.
Doesn't this go back to a very slovenly, very negative, very anti-Constitution Department of Justice with Eric Holder? I'm going to hold his big feet to the fire and say that we'd be much better served as an American public if we could get him replaced, along with Obama, of course. But there just doesn't seem to be any beliefs anymore. There's no belief in the Bible. There's no belief in God's Word. There's no belief in getting up like the Saturday Morning Post covers of going to church as a family and going home and having dinner as a family. We've lost our basic moral compass in this country.
I would disagree with you on that. I do not believe the people have completely lost their basic moral compass. I believe that there is a false narrative being portrayed by the mainstream media that is being funded by a group of elites, that is being supported by a lawless administration on a national level and often on state levels. And what we have is a mainstream media pushing this idea down the throats of everyday Americans.
Get Gina, quick.
Narrative changes, and that the Supreme Court, Congress, that the mainstream media hear the very clear message that Americans still do, in fact, believe in marriage as one man and one woman, still do, in fact, believe in the importance of parents, mothers and fathers raising the next generation.
Chris, I had just a little power bump over here, and we've had trouble lately. I was cut off on my end of it for a short period of time. We did get everything you said, and I'm back on the air with you. The one thing that really bothers me, Chris, is we can both stand up and we can brag and talk about and really expound upon the benefits of marriage between a man and a wife, but then our kids go into the public school system and they're indoctrinated into this attitude of same-sex marriage and homosexuality and transgenderism. I mean, our whole society needs a cleansing. I'm not ready to say that we can beat this problem. Are you going to argue with me on that?
Yeah, I have to argue with you on that. I believe Mom and Dad. I believe in Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Main Street in America, and that if they are empowered and if they have the courage as they stand together and realize that they're not alone, that they will stand up, and they'll stand up to, as you're referencing, to their school committees and say, this is nuts. This is crazy. I don't want my child being taught this. We're the ones. This is, I asked the question yesterday in an email, who rules this country? And this country is, in fact, ruled by the people. Right now, we are at a stage where it is lawless, led by the administration, but the people need to take it back. And the National Organization for Marriage is going to start that process on June 19th in our nation's capital. We are calling on tens of thousands of marriage supporters from all across America to come to the nation's capital next week on June 19th and march with us and make a very clear, concise statement to the powers that be, to the media, and to the rest of America that marriage deserves to be protected, and we're going to take it back. And the battle for marriage is not over. It is only just beginning.
God bless you for your efforts on this, Chris. And the one other thing I would say, along with asking for God's blessings on this march, is also pray that some of the news media will follow this and report on it instead of just kind of pushing it onto the back burner like the ABCs, NBCs, and CBSs do. They'll cover all the radicalism. They'll cover all the gays and the lesbians and the transgenders, but they won't cover a lot of things that are good for families in the United States. How are you going to overcome that and get the media out there?
Well, we've been working for months already to get the media engaged and have them ready for next week through a variety of means, making sure that we have people writing op-eds and getting the media simply out to the event. But the number one way that the media will pay attention is when thousands upon thousands of people march in the streets of Washington, D.C. Let's remember how we have changed this country at different times. It has been when the people have taken to the streets. The people can do this, and marriage supporters across this country can stand up and take back marriage and demand that it be preserved in law and culture by marching with us on June 19th. And if we get enough people there, if the crowd is huge enough, the media cannot ignore it.
I absolutely admire what you're doing, and I certainly hope the news media follows up on this. But what about the public school system, Chris? What can we do there to eliminate a lot of this, and I'm going to use these words, freak show attitudes that are being permeated to our youngsters?
Well, there really is only one way to do that, and that is for each one of us who believe marriage is one man and one woman, who believe that mothers and fathers matter, who believe that husbands and wives matter, who believe that there's a basic morality. We have to stand up and make sure that we are electing people who support us. I have to always put this back on me as a citizen and on the rest of us as citizens. We have the power to vote. Who are we electing? Are we at our school committee meetings? Do we go down into the dusty basement and actually look at the curriculum that our kids are being taught, or do we just wait until it comes home? We have to take this back. I spent years, I'm speaking personally now, I spent years doing abstinence education before I got into the marriage fight. And the only way that these things change is when Mr. and Mrs. Smith, mom and dad, march themselves down to the school committee and say, enough is enough. The way we're going to take marriage back is when Mr. and Mrs. Smith march in Washington, D.C. on June 19th and say, enough is enough. Marriage is unique. Marriage deserves to be protected. Children deserve a mother and a father.
I just absolutely am honored that you took the time to come on our program, and I certainly hope that you'll come back after the event is completed and tell us how successful it was. And by the way, how old are your children right now?
Right now, my children are, I got to think about that, they're 16, 14, and 12.
Oh, Dad's got trouble with the car keys already.
Yes, I do. My daughter drives me to her workplace. So.
Yeah, and she also drives you nuts if she's a typical teenage daughter.
Very true, very true.
I certainly
know the way to protect her and the children that she will raise, and my grandchildren, great-grandchildren, is for us to march. And I would encourage your listeners to go to marriagemarch.org. That's marriagemarch.org for more information. If they can't come out to D.C., there are ways to be involved from afar. June 19th is going to be a critical day in our nation's history.
All right. Chris Plant, the Regional Director, National Organization for Marriage. Excellent young man. I appreciate him being on my program. God's blessings, and I mean that, to you, your organization, and what you do. Thank you for being on the program this morning.
It has been my pleasure. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir, very much. We need more people like Chris Plant and more people that are dedicated to restoring values in this country. And I certainly wish him and all the others on that march on June 19th a lot of success. God bless them. Time for the weather forecast. Holy smokes, and the weather is brought to you this hour by Red's Trading Post, 203 5th Avenue South in Twin Falls. And they've got an inventory clearance going on right now on most new firearms. Yes, many are being sold below cost. They've got all the guns. They've got all the ammo. They've got all the accessories. They've got all the people there that can help you answer all the questions you have at Red's Trading Post, 203 5th Avenue South in Twin Falls. 733-3546. Here now, Michael Rogers weather.
Well, another day of sun. In fact, you're going to have a lot of sun, as I stated yesterday, the next weekend, going into next week, into next weekend. The day, as far as the temperature is concerned, is going to be in the 80s, but when you get to Thursday, the temperature is in the low 90s, about 91. So enjoy the day, enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you got.
Thank you very much, MichaelRogersWeather.com. Brought to you by Red's Trading Post, 203 5th Avenue South in Twin Falls, 733-3546. All right, now it's your turn. Calls are welcome and appreciated. 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I'd like to hear what you have to say, so give us a jingle on the landline. You know, I want to just say this because we hear so much about swimming, and we hear so much about the possibility and potentiality of people drowning. Please, I just picked up a newspaper story this morning and was reading. Be careful out there. If you're unfamiliar with the water conditions, you know, you go jumping off rocks or something like that, the water might look like it's really deep and really cool and inviting. Know your surroundings, please, without jumping in and having something happen. There's so many people that are injured, so many spinal injuries, so many accidents to where all of a sudden they hit their head, and the drownings. Please, with all the water activities out there, be careful this summer. Gina, up at Elk River, when you were growing up, a lot of lakes, or where did you go swimming? Did you have a local pool, or what did you do up there?
Well, we had Elk Creek Reservoir, and it was a man-made reservoir for when Potlatch was actually up there, because that's where Potlatch actually started, you know, the Potlatch Corporation.
Yeah.
And so we had the man-made lake, and lots of drownings there. I was almost a victim of drowning, and then a lot of people would go up to the Elk Creek Falls. And lots of accidents happened up there, too. People diving off of the falls and then hitting their head and not coming back.
You know, Gina, I really maintain this because one of my very best friends from high school ended up being a quadriplegic for that kind of a circumstance, getting up on a little rock ledge and diving off into a limestone pond that was back in Wisconsin. There's a lot of those limestone ponds. Yep. And never had checked the depth or anything, and certainly from up above, you're not going to be able to tell how deep the water is. And it was a horrendous thing, and I just think there's too many things out there that can go wrong. Know the environment, know the water situation, and please know how to swim.
Amen. And if you are going to a new location and you've never swam there before, so you don't know, you can always get online and look at it. But ask the locals because they will know that waterway. And so just ask them, hey, is there anything dangerous? Is it like shallow water? Do people dive? Where are the swimming locations? Ask around, and the locals will tell you.
I was on the swimming team when I was in high school, and competitive swimming, mine was the 200 and 400-yard freestyle. And invariably, we had to learn, that flat dive, that racer's dive, where you hit the water almost like a belly flop flat, and you don't go below the surface too far, so you can just start swimming and racing right away. And we had to really learn how to dive into, from a platform, the shallow end of the pool. Any dip at all going down into the water, you could have had a chance to possibly break your neck. And you have to really be very, very careful.
See, I didn't take, I wasn't part of any swim team or anything. I just kind of had to learn. But the depth of the water definitely is key. Now, I never learned how to do what you're calling the shallow dive. I've done the belly flops before, lots of those. But swimming is so important. If you're going to go out into the waterways, please at least take some swimming lessons.
Yeah, even accomplished swimmers. I was just reading a story the other day, and I think this is really bears mentioning, is that if you're going over to the coast, my goodness, I guess it's called those riptides in the ocean, to where they can be standing in about knee-high water, and all of a sudden they're a mile offshore.
Yeah, especially on the Oregon coast and Northern California, where there's lots of cliffs and everything. Yeah, those waterways can be very, very treacherous. And when the tide comes in and those waves really start happening, you got to be careful. Get off the rocks.
We were in Spain, and in 2002, I had to go over for the World Equestrian Games and announce for the United States. And one of the things we noticed is, first of all, the water off the southern coast of Spain is not exactly what you might say pure. It's an ugly, lake dirty type ocean water. I mean, it's really ugly. And we walked out there in the ocean probably up to our chest. And, whoa, I'm telling you what, I didn't care for that at all. You could just feel some swirling. And all of a sudden, while I was standing there, I felt this like I was being pulled backwards, which I was. I was in some kind of a little riptide. And that was it, boy. I had to struggle and get back to where I was out of that certain kind of a riptide and get back to shore. But I can see easily how people get pulled out into the ocean. This one boy the other day, I believe it was a sheriff's officer or whatever, trying to save a young boy that was in the water. He ended up, a mile and a half away from the original end point?
Yeah, ocean currents are very, very strong, and just because the water looks calm on the surface, that is not necessarily the case underneath.
Yeah, so please, the main reason we're bringing this up, the kids are out, it's summertime, school's over, they're going to be going out, and don't go jumping in the canals or anything like that. Please. I know in the old days, Grandpa said he did it, but things have changed a little bit, folks. So, anyhow, be careful out there. I'm going to do this good word for Lease Furniture, Floors, and More, and then we'll take some of your calls, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. Lease Furniture, Floors, and More. Now, you know what I think about my geyser chair. My geyser chair is my geyser chair. I don't even have to say anything. When people come over to visit, they have a tendency to look at that great big leather chair and they say, oh, this must be yours. And I'll go, yes, It is. Leave it alone. It's molded for my big fat body. Anyway, Father's Day reclining sale going on at Lee's Furniture, Floors and More, and they've got all the different recliners, the Wall Saver Power recliners, the Rocker recliners, they've got the Power recliners, they've got them all at Lee's Furniture, Floors and More. Oh my goodness, and all the sofas and the love seats. Woo-hoo. Take Dad by the hand and say, come on, Dad, here we go. It's Father's Day. He's going to love it. At Lee's Furniture, Floors and More, 459 Overland in Burley. They are waiting to see you. Okay? All right, give us a call, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. What's that river up there by you that's so dangerous, too, up where you were born and raised?
There is the Clearwater and the Columbia.
Well, I would imagine that Columbia's got to be really dangerous. You don't want to mess around with that.
And down in Lewiston, they have what they call the Convergence, and that's, I do believe, the Snake River and the Clearwater. That's where they merge.
Now, the Columbia, this is a dumb question, but I used to do quite a few rodeos along the Columbia at various towns. And I've heard various reports about how deep is that Columbia anyway. Do you know?
I don't know how deep it is, but I do know that they do use it as a waterway, and so they have to go in and dredge it every once in a while.
Yeah.
I don't think it's all that deep.
I'll tell you what, that's the funny part of it is, I was on the swimming team, but I've said this on the air, Gina, I will not swim in water where I can't see the bottom.
Jaws did it for me. I can't do it either.
When that head fell through the bottom of the boat, my juji fruits were stuck to the ceiling.
Exactly. See, Jaws ruined swimming in any sort of waterway for me. If I'm in a pool, I'm okay because I can see the bottom.
Yep.
But swimming in Elk River, you couldn't see, and so instead of Jaws, I thought we had, like the big killer trout.
The big what?
Killer trout. I thought a big old trout was going to come and eat me.
There's nothing worse when you have a fear of seeing or not being able to see the bottom of a lake bed or a riverbed, is going into the water and having all those reeds and those ferns and all that hit your legs, and you can be just like Simon, Peter, and Jesus. You can walk on water.
You can walk on water, and if I felt something brush across my leg, you were talking about I was an Olympic swimmer, and I would get to the dock as fast as I could.
Yeah, it's just like my crutches a couple of years ago. I was getting in a boat over here at Murtaugh Lake, and one fell in the lake, and they've got holes along the side, and I said, quick, before it sinks, and too late, we saw the last bubble, and then we spent the next half hour trying to find it in the bottom of the lake.
Did you find it?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Either that or it was going to get off the boat and just walk in a circle.
Who had to go in to find it?
Well, we all did, but it wasn't the most pleasant thing in the world to do.
Probably not.
So,
have you been fishing on a boat since?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I love to go fishing and everything, but as far as, and like the Great Lakes, people out here don't really appreciate how big the Great Lakes really are. It's basically like being on the ocean. It really is. Whether it's Lake Michigan, Lake Superior, or whatever, it's just absolutely enormous.
Yeah, and I guess wintertime and, when the swells get really big there, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can remember going up to Escanaba, Michigan and fishing with my uncle in the summertime and going out, and you're in this little bitty boat, man, it can be more than maybe 8 or 10 feet long, and one of those big oar boats going by, and you're going, oh, my gosh, please pick me up, put me on dry land, I'm scared to death. I didn't like being out on that big water.
I went to ocean fishing once out in Ocean Shores up in northern Washington, and actually that was kind of fun because you went far enough out there to where you didn't see land, and it's kind of a surreal experience to know that something could happen and you can't swim that far. Well,
and then when we went on a cruise a couple of years ago, and we were walking around the ship and everything, and we're way out in the middle of the ocean, and I go up to the deck where they play basketball, and they got a little golf course and everything else, and I'm going up this walkway, and everything was fine, and I kind of took the tour with Deanna, and coming down, my shirt sleeve on my crutch caught on the railing. Uh-oh. And I started to pitch forward, and I was going over the railing. Now, let me just say that, and I want to say this in all sincerity, the laundry bill for my clothes went up $20.
Did Deanne save you?
Yeah, she did. She grabbed me by my belt, and I thought I was as white as a ghost. I thought I was leaving the ship. I thought I was man overboard.
And let me guess, you never walked near the railing again?
Nope,
for the rest
didn't want to. Stayed in the middle of the ship till we docked.
Don't blame me. I would have done the same thing.
Okay. Well, we're going to take a little break right now, probably needful. And before we do take that break, I want to remind everybody, too, about the Chadwick Sports Grill. Today, Tuesday, smothered creamy mushroom pork steaks. Oh, this sounds so good. Smothered creamy mushroom pork steaks served with choice of potato, veggies, and super salad, just $9.95. Smothered creamy mushroom pork steaks? Get in there to the Chadwick Sports Grill, 139 West Main in Burley. It is delicious. You're going to love the Chadwick in Burley. I'll be back in 6 minutes. Oh, here we go. Last hour on a Tuesday. Good morning, everybody. I'm Zeb Bell, Zeb at the Ranch, with our major sponsor, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations serving you, along with some of our great advertisers, which include Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More at 459 Overland in Burley, and our friends at Western Waste Services, always at your disposal. Get on the route service today. Call them at 734-6969. Hey, by the way, the Drift Inn at 545 F Street in Rupert, oh, the weather is heating up, and the patio at the Drift Inn is open, and great food, music that's fantastic, and Thursday night is always barbecue night, featuring ribs and pulled pork or salmon. Oh, my goodness, pulled pork or salmon, too? It's so good. The Drift Inn on the square in Rupert, a great place to relax and enjoy excellent dining. The Drift Inn. Right now, on a Tuesday, it is time to say hello to America's historian. Yes, this little old gray-haired man standing over there with long gray hair and his great big heavy book and his quill pen jotting down things from George Washington to Ulysses S. Grant to Kit Carson, naked mountain men, all kinds of historical mentions. Here's Dr. History.
Good morning, Zeb. There's still a little bit of brown hair in that white head of mine.
Not much.
Not a lot, but, there's a little color there. How you doing this morning?
I am great, and by the way, before we get started, we want to tell everybody that they can share in all these programs again and again by going to dr-history.com for Dr. History.
That's right. They can listen to all the previous stories, and the story today will be on probably by tonight or in the morning.
Well, now tell us, what is the story that's going to be on tonight or in the morning that's going to be on right now?
All right. Well, we're going to go back to a good old mountain man by the name of Jim Bridger.
Oh, boy.
So this is just kind of one of his stories. So we'll get started in that. There's a guy by the name of Captain William Sublett. Now, he was kind of the head of a group of the trappers for the Rocky Mountain Fur Company, and he was heading back to St. Louis with the beaver that belonged to the Rocky Mountain Fur Company. Now, that year had been a great year. I mean, the fur harvest in that rendezvous amounted to almost $170,000. Now, back then, that was a huge amount. In fact, it was the biggest haul of the fur trade in the entire Northwest. Now, I want everybody to just kind of imagine, here's Sublett's brigade on the march. Okay, a long cavalcade stretched in single file for nearly a half a mile. Now, if you can picture the mountaineers in their hunting leather, stuff, they're armed with their rifles, mounted on their horses, leading their pack horses down a hill of the forest. Well, basically, they kind of look like a bunch of bandits returning with plunder. And on top of some of these packs were perched several half-breed children that kind of wild-eyed, black-eyed little kids on top of these packs. And Of course, these were the children of the trappers that from their Indian spouses in the wilderness. Now, before Bill Sutler started, a few of his men got a little impatient, so they set out ahead of the main party. Well, they ran into some Blackfeet Indians, and several of them were killed over in that Jackson Hole area. Well, about the same time, Jim Bridger and a buddy of his by the name of Tom Fitzpatrick, they headed north. Now, they headed kind of northwest towards Henry's Fork of the Snake River. Now, that's up towards Island Park and Henry's Lake up in that area. Now, they were planning to cross the Continental Divide to the headwaters of the Missouri. But that was kind of a pretty hot bed of Indian hostility, the Blackfoot Indians. They were on the rampage. Well, Jim and Tom rode off. They were pretty excited. But, you know, there was a lot of competition among fur trappers. Okay, now there's a guy by the name of Vanderberg, and his name's going to come up here in a little bit. Okay, now they had been at a place called Pierre's Hole. Now, Pierre's Hole is actually west of the Tetons. It's on the opposite side as Jackson Hole. So Pierre's Hole is actually another rendezvous spot, like say, on the west side of the Tetons. Well, this Vanderberg guy, he was waiting for gear and supplies, and because they had to have trade goods that they could hope to get an advantage. And anyway, Jim, Bridger, and Tom, they were gone. They hit the trail. And they got their men equipped and with the packs and one thing and another, and they lit out as fast as they could to march on Jim Bridger's trail. And this was about the end of the first week in August. So it wasn't long until Jim Bridger's scouts informed him that his rivals, this Vanderberg guy, they were pushing hard to overtake him. They wanted to follow him to see where he was going. Well, Jim, he was plumb disgusted at being dogged by these, he called them greenhorns, because especially they refused to divide the fur country with him. They thought that'd be the fairest thing. You know, let's just divide it up. You guys take this area, we'll take that area. Well, Jim and Tom, they held a council, and they decided to just kind of quietly just leave, just slip away. And they figured they could fool those greenhorns in strange country anyway. So they went to work, covering their trail. They marched through water, leading their men over stretches of bare rock, heading into the grassy prairie, away from the stream they were following. Then they would scatter and through the grass, every man by himself in a dozen different directions, to meet the next day at a prearranged spot. Well, they traveled fast, and sometimes they sent a whole bunch of riders off at a different trail just to try to fake off this Vanderberg guy. Well, they passed across the head of a bunch of buffalo herds so that the hooves of the animals would just wipe out their trail. And they used all the tricks they had learned in the years of scouting on the plains and in the mountains. Well, the greenhorn, this Vanderberg guy, he was ignorant of all that country, but he was wide awake. He never rested. He was always on the alert, and he threw his scouts way ahead on the flanks, and he probably had one or two good Indian guides with him too, and he was ready and willing to learn. Well, so, you know, to the utter disgust of Bridger and his party, Vanderberg just stuck on their trail. They couldn't get rid of him. So they could not stop to trap or hunt, and like I say, this Vanderberg, they just were relentless, just following. And anyway, Jim and Tom, they kind of lost all their patience. Their plan had failed, so if they could not shake off these persistent greenhorns, they decided to make a new road. So rather than share the fur with rivals, they resolved to let the beaver alone and lead Vanderberg on a wild goose chase. So heading away from the mountains, they followed the old Blackfoot Trail down the Missouri River, and for some time they kept on and never stopped to set a single trap. Well, this Vanderberg guy, he took off after them as fast as he could go. At the same time, he kept seeing these beaver dams. And I'm sure he wondered, well, how come we're going this way when I'm seeing beaver dams here? Well, in the meantime, these greenhorns realized that they were being fooled, and that the country they were heading into didn't have the beaver. So they had lost their chance to buy the beaver at the rendezvous at Pierre's Hole, but now it seems they were being given a runaround until the hunting season ended, and then the fur wouldn't be worth anything. So this Vanderberg guy, he held council, he gave up the chase, divided up their forces, and they went exploring for hunting grounds of their own. Well, Vanderberg, he took about 50 men, and they headed straight into the heart of Blackfoot country. Now, here's where inexperience comes in. He was new to Indian warfare.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it wasn't long until the scouts found some Indian fires burning and surrounded by the carcasses of buffalo that had just been killed. Well, they hurried back to warn their leader. Now, Vandenberg, again, not too familiar. He took 9 men, and he wandered recklessly. They galloped off into the sunset towards the Indians. And he found everything as they'd reported. The fires were smoking, the buffalo half butchered. And but this Vandenberg guy, he was kind of bold or, I don't know, dumb. I'm not sure which one to call him. He followed the Indian trail squarely into an ambush. Well, the first volley mortally wounded his horse, which fell and pinned him to the ground. He called his men to help him get up, but before anything could be done, one of his guys was killed and scalped right there. The others, they just ran for their lives. Well, poor old Vandenberg, he fired and killed one of the Indians, but it didn't take long for them to dispatch him. He was, like I say, he was laying there trapped by his horse. Well, the rest of his party, they made no attempt to recover his body, but they rode night and day until they reached the camp of some friendly people. So here we are. Vandenberg's gone. That's the competition. Meanwhile, Jim and Tom, they settled down to trapping. They were, this is what they wanted to do. But they kept their eyes open for Indians. They were not easily caught napping or, caught in an ambush. But they made some pretty good precautions. They brought in all the horses before sundown. They picketed them in camp. They posted a guard. At the first streak of dawn, Jim would mount and ride at full speed out from the camp about a half a mile. And then he would circle around to see if there were any Indian trails, to see if India had approached their camp. Well, Jim scouted every gully, every thicket, and having assured himself that there were no Indians around, he would return. The horses would be taken out to graze under guard again. Now, on the march, scouts rode in advance and along the ridges on either side. So it was pretty much impossible for the Indians to surprise Jim Bridger. And again, this is where, Jim Bridger was such a good mountain man, trapper, scout, all that. But one day, Jim saw a large band of Blackfeet heading into the prairie. Well, they each saw each other, so both parties kind of kept their distance. Well, the Indians made signs of friendship, and the trappers, they replied. And so a small party of Indians then rode out, holding high the peace pipe. Now, it was clear from their gestures that they wanted to smoke the peace pipe. Okay, so Bridger and Fitzpatrick, they're willing enough to have peace if, peace could be made to stick. But, again, they were a little doubtful whether smoking the peace pipe with the Blackfeet would really work. I mean, the Blackfeet had just killed this Vandenberg guy, so, they were tricky. Well, the two trappers hesitated, but then a young Mexican by the name of Loreto, now he was a free trapper who was traveling with them, he spoke up, and Loreto had a wife, which was a really nice-looking Blackfoot girl. Now, she'd been captured by the Crows. Loreto had ransomed her and made her his wife, and they had a little baby boy. Anyway, Loreto told Bridger and Fitzpatrick, he said, don't be afraid. He said, I know these Indians, and they are my wife's relatives. Well, Fitzpatrick nodded, and he turned to Bridger and said, well, I guess we'll go out and talk to them. And he said, you stay here with the packs and the men. Well, Bridger agreed, and Fitzpatrick went forward, trailed by 7 of his trappers. Now, one of the Blackfeet chiefs, his name was Chief Son, he came forward with 7 braves to meet them. Now, he'd sat down, and they shook hands, and they began passing the peace pipe around, and this went on for a while. Meanwhile, Loreto's wife, she was staring at the Indians across the way, and suddenly she yelled. She said, there's my brother. Well, she put her small son into her husband's arms, and she ran across to her people. Well, they welcomed her with open arms, and it was their first reunion since she'd been taken captive by the Crows. Well, when they learned that one of the trappers had rescued her, their hearts kind of warmed up, and they kind of softened towards the white men. And so all the Blackfeet, they came swarming to greet her, and, they were happy. I mean, a big, happy reunion. Well, one of the braves in the council saw some movement, and he kind of signaled to try to figure out what was going on. So one of the young warriors rode quickly out to the council to explain what was going on. Now, Jim Bridger, like I said, he was back with the other group, and he became suspicious. Well, the young warrior on the horse had a bow in his hand, and so Jim mounted his horse, and taking his rifle, he rode out so that the numbers would be even. Well, Jim rested his rifle across his saddle, and when Bridger rode up, Chief's son got up to shake his hand. Well, Bridger, he was watching the young warrior on the horse, and he saw that warrior had some arrows in his hand. Now, knowing how rapidly an Indian can shoot, Jim kind of thumbed back the hammer on his rifle. Now, this may have been a mistake, but he just wanted to be ready in case there was trouble. Well, the chief reached for Jim Bridger's hand, but when he heard Jim click the rifle back, the chief kind of got a little suspicious, and he grabbed the barrel of Jim's rifle, and he pushed the muzzle down. Well, in that moment, Jim's finger just automatically pulled the trigger. The gun went off. It exploded into the ground between the chief's feet. So things are starting to heat up just a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, before the men on the ground could gain their feet, the young warrior on the horse had already shot 2 arrows into Bridger's back. So here's Jim Bridger with 2 arrows in his back. You know, that's a little painful.
A little painful, you say?
This outraged chief.
Uh-huh.
Well, the chief kind of pulled the rifle from Jim Bridger's hands, and he brought the stock up hard and right across old Jim Bridger's neck and head, just smacked him across the head. Well, Jim went down, and the chief jumped into Jim's saddle and galloped away to rally his people. Well, there followed a time of, as you can imagine, some pretty good excitement. Each side rushing to cover among the rocks. Women ran, dragging their kids. Men jumped back and forth, dodging bullets, war whoops, crack of rifles. The battle had begun. Now, poor Loretto, here he was with his little Indian boy. His Indian wife was with his enemies, and he was with her enemies. Well, he could see her struggling with her brother's people, trying to get away to run back to him, but they held on to her. They wouldn't let her go. Well, now this is kind of a brave thing he did. He caught up the child in his arms. He rushed forward, regardless of the Indians that were shooting, and he placed the Indian baby, his little son, in the safety of his wife's arms. Now, even the heart of the Blackfoot chief was kind of touched by this noble deed, and so he pronounced Loretto a madman, but he let him depart in peace. And the young Mexican, he hesitated, but he urged his wife to, just stay there. That was the safest thing to do, and that she belonged to his tribe, and she needed to stay with his people. So his wife, knowing the situation, she asked him to go ahead and leave, and he did. Well, come nighttime, the shooting ended. Each party pulled out under cover of darkness. There was no victory, really, as there had been really no reason for the fight. It was just an accident. Well, in the course of all this, 3 mountain men had been shot and 6 horses killed. When Jim Bridger came to, he'd been knocked out during this whole thing. He found that the battle was over, the Blackfeet were gone, the trappers in camp, and old Tom Fitzpatrick, he's squatting down beside him, and he says, we found you lying there stuck full of arrows, and we figured you was just gone. And he says, how are you? Well, how are you laying there with your head smacked in and 2 arrows sticking out of your back? So lying on his face, Bridger turned his head, and it was pretty painful. It made him a little dizzy, and he had one pretty good headache, and he thought his neck was broken. Well, he tried to move and roll over, and that's when Tom Fitzpatrick held him down. He said, you better probably ought to lay still because you got 2 arrows sticking out of your back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at this point, Tom says, well, we need to get those arrows out, and so Jim says, well, go ahead. And Jim knew well enough that Indian arrowheads were only about 3 inches long, flat, triangular, with beveled edges and a notched flank, and it was held in there by sinews. Well, Jim bit on a stick. Tom got his knife out, and he started tugging at the arrows, first one, then the other. Well, they wouldn't come out. So Jim had a wild notion for a moment that Tim might shove the arrows on through him and cut off the points and yank the sticks out backwards. But Tom would not risk doing that because, well, you push them through, there's lungs and heart and one thing and another that are somewhat vital. So Tom says to Jim, he says, I'm going to have to butcher them out, boy. Well, Jim lay still while Tom went to work on him, probing and cutting, and Jim could feel the blade of Tom's Green River knife press into the wound, flat against the arrow point. He could feel it work back and forth, widening the gash. Finally, he heard Tom sigh and says, well, there's one. So he had 1 arrow out. Well, then Tom turned to the other arrow, and he cut, and he probed, and he tugged, and he pulled, and he sawed the arrow back and forth, and practically lifting Jim off the ground. And finally said, he says, this here arrow is wedged in the bone and it's bent around somehow. He says, you're going to have to just carry this one till we meet up with a doctor somewhere. Well, Jim, he kind of grumbled. He says, well, I don't aim to carry the arrow stick with me. He says, try to work it loose. Well, by that time, the blood had kind of softened the sinews, which held the point of the shaft. And with a little manipulation, Tom was able to separate the two, and he pulled the shaft away. And anyway, he slapped the beaver fur over Jim's wounds and fastened the dressing on with a strip torn from Jim's shirt and let him sit up. And he led him to Jim's horse, and he helped him get in the saddle, and then they all hit the trail for the beaver streams. So here's Jim Bridger with an arrowhead still in his body. Now, actually, he carried that for about 3 more years, and about 1835, 3 years later, he was in Jackson Hole when Dr. Marcus Whitman came through. And at that point, he said, hey, I've got this arrow in my back. It's kind of bothering me a little, as this arrowhead. And so Dr. Marcus Whitman went to work and removed the arrow from his back.
Holy smokes. Now, don't you tell me that these dudes weren't a little tough.
They were. We've talked before, Zeb. These guys were a different breed. I mean, can you imagine somebody going to work on your back with a bowie knife or any kind of knife?
Well, you probably know people. You probably know people that if they get a paper cut, it's the end of the world.
They want workman's comp. And they didn't have workman's comp back then.
Oh, my goodness, the story of a tough guy, Jim Bridger. Now, help me real quick. We've only got a minute left here. Jim Bridger really wasn't a big guy, was he?
No, he actually wasn't. Not like, say, Jeremiah Johnson, John Johnson, some of those guys that were, pretty good-sized guys. But again, Jim was a pretty amazing guy. Some of the things that he went through, and as you recall, if you listen to the story of Hugh Glass, he was one of the guys. He was just a young trapper that left Hugh Glass after the bear had attacked him.
Right. Okay, now, Dr.
Glass was going to catch up with Jim Bridger and get revenge.
Absolutely.
Which he never did. But Jim was a pretty amazing guy.
Real fast, Dr. History, tell everybody how they can listen to Dr. History.
Well, the story I just mentioned, Hugh Glass, that's on our webpage, dr-history.com. And that's a few stories back, but every week we'll put a new story on. So by tonight or tomorrow, this story will be on the internet, so you can listen on your smartphone while you're going down the road or when you get home at night, whatever.
All right. Dr. History, better known as Dr. Ken Turner, always does a great job. And don't forget, dr-history.com. You can listen to those anytime you'd like. Thank you. Great job. I got to run, but have a great week. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Okay. You have a good day, Zach.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Dr. History. I tell you what, great stories of the Old West. Hey, don't forget, we've got 2 sponsors of our Cassia County School Days, and we want to say thank you to them. One, of course, A Child's World at 1308 Overland Avenue in Burley, and they're having their 12th annual Everything for Babies and Toddlers sale. They've got all the clothes, toys, baby books, and the cribs, and the strollers, and the walkers, everything right there at a family store. And that's, of course, A Child's World at 1308 Overland in Burley. And always check with the Burley Ambulatory Surgery Center at 1344 Highland Drive in Burley before having an outpatient surgery. Every procedure they do at Ambulatory Surgery Center will save you money while getting outstanding medical care right here in Burley. And all you have to do is call for more information at 677-8888. 677-8888. Ambulatory Surgery Center at 1344 Highland Avenue in Burley, and A Child's World, 1308 Overland in Burley, bringing you school days in Cassia County. We're going to take a little break, come back with our next guest. Don't you go away.
And now, Now back to Zeb at the Ranch on AM 1230 KBAR. To reach Zeb, call 436-2244 or toll free 1-866-927-4587. And now, here is Zeb Bell.
Thank you very much and welcome back. Last half hour on the show this morning, Zeb at the Ranch, and right now we're going to go to the phone line. We have a gentleman that represents the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. His name is Greg Pruitt, and we're going to say, good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning, Zeb. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Well, it's very nice to have you on our program this morning, and I think the best thing to do to start off this morning is, Greg, what is, and explain it to us, Idaho's Second Amendment Alliance? Explain what it is.
Well, we're a local grassroots organization. We're located up here in the Treasure Valley. I live out in Middleton specifically, but a lot of the work and stuff that we started was up here in the Treasure Valley. And what we wanted to do was start a group that was local to Idaho, was locally controlled by us, rather than a national organization. And what we wanted to do was represent the citizens of Idaho and kind of be a bridge between them and the politicians, which I think a lot of people feel that gap much of the time. And so we wanted to try and be a voice for all those people who don't feel like they're being heard, and to try and make a difference both legislatively at the State House as well as locally in towns and cities and anywhere else somebody feels like their Second Amendment rights are being violated, or where maybe their city council is proposing rules that violate their Second Amendment rights. We wanted to be able to fight way down on those levels to help people out. And so that's why I started the group, because I didn't feel like there was that group for Idaho. And so that's where we are.
Greg, it almost sounds, and I really respect your organization, but it sounds like you're acting, if you will, and correct me if I'm wrong, kind of like a buffer zone between the folks with boots on the ground out here in the hinterland and our politicians, and kind of an explanation group for both sides. Would that be a fair assessment?
Well, yeah, I guess that's a fair assessment. And again, my frustration, and the reason part of I started this group was I had been in talking to gun owners, and I've grown up around firearms my whole life, and I'm closely tied with the firearms community. And all the citizens that kept telling me that, bills and legislation and things they wanted to see done in Idaho was not the same things the politicians were doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really frustrating. So I said, well, look, why don't we create a group who can hopefully become a bigger voice, and maybe these guys will start paying attention if we can get this group big enough and our voice big enough. If they're not going to pay attention to each one of those, one of their voters in their district, maybe as a group as a whole we can really make a voice and be heard. And so yeah, we try to be a buffer, so to speak, or a bridge between both sides, so we can have the politicians here and they can say, hey, look, the good ones, this is what's going on at the State House, this is what you need to know, and we can relay that back to the people, because a lot of times that information that the people needed to know was not coming down from the politicians, or not effectively. So we're trying to be that bridge between both sides.
Greg, I am very concerned, and I've had a lot of people all across the United States on this program. I am really concerned that little by little, inch by inch, we're having our Second Amendment rights eroded. I think there's a lot of things that are going on behind closed doors to stymie and stifle gun ownership in this country. Would you agree with me, or am I just crying wolf?
No, you're 100% correct. In fact, on the national level, I think they finally figured it out. That you can't go to Congress with a bill that says we're going to ban all guns, or we're going to ban all these types of guns, we're going to ban this, we're going to ban that. I think they figured out that that's not an effective route, because it's too out in the open. It's too right in the American people's face. So what I think you're seeing now is the Obama administration and others have figured out, hey, well, what, if we do all these other rules and regulations behind closed doors, if we affect the banks, if we affect insurance companies, that starts to hit the Second Amendment owners. But the problem is we don't know about it most of the time. That stuff is stuck deep in the news most of the time. And so they figured out an effective way to gun control is like the frog in the pot. Slowly keep boiling it, keep chipping away, and they've been doing this for years, until eventually there's just not a way to purchase firearms because it's too expensive, or insurance companies won't won't cover businesses who deal with firearms and so forth. So you're 100% correct. It's being eroded away very quickly, but also at the same time they've been doing this for 50 years.
You know, Greg, I was talking to a gentleman back east the other day, and it's not that I'm trying to bring up something that might give some crackpot an idea. I'm just bringing up the gist of our conversation. This gentleman lived back in Virginia, and we were talking about guns and gun control, and his fear is that, like you just mentioned, insurance companies, homeowners, policies, that type of thing, if they find out that you have a gun, they might start restricting coverage. Are you concerned about this happening as far as gun ownership is concerned?
Yes, and the issue is, and that's how they can affect, we have a very good gun-friendly state here in Idaho compared to a lot of other states. But by these national policies or by other states setting precedent with insurance companies and banks and homeowners and all these other policies in other states, those can trickle down into here whether we like it or not. Those policies can affect us, and they are affecting us and our local businesses and so forth. So yeah, those policies do affect us. It's a very effective way at doing gun control because the average citizen most of the time is only paying attention to the big things that they're seeing on the news. They're not seeing all these other things happening behind the scenes, and that is a real concern of ours. We try to bring those stories to light on Facebook and everywhere else we can. Hey, this is what's going on behind doors. This is what's going on that you're not seeing in the news, and trying to bring light to those things so people understand what's happening.
Greg, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we right now today in 2014? Are we at a level of no return to where the government's got us and it's kind of a gotcha situation, or is there still hope left for gun owners and families to protect themselves? What are your thoughts? Where are we on a scale of that 1 to 10?
As far as Idaho goes, or as far as on a national?
I think all of the above, both Idaho and the nation, 10 being very serious, 1 being not so serious. Where do you think we are?
Oh, shoot. On the national level, I'm 9 or a 10. I mean, I just don't see how it's going to turn around with the amount of debt we have and with the amount of people we have on government substance and so forth. I just don't see how all these things are going to turn around. As far as guns specifically on a national level, keeping them from banning firearms and stuff, I feel pretty comfortable that they're not going to be able to get something like that through. That doesn't mean that certain individuals won't just do it anyway, because the Constitution doesn't really seem to matter to a lot of these guys. On a Idaho level, as far as firearms goes, I don't know, 5 or 6. I mean, honestly, the few years now that since I started this group, and you get in there, and people keep telling me, the governor himself told me on a different radio station up here one day, we have the most firearm-friendly Second Amendment legislature in the country. And I said, really? Because every bill that we keep trying to support, that's a really good firearms bill, keeps dying. I said, so there's obviously a disconnect here in Idaho about, the citizens like yourself and many others who understand the Second Amendment, where I think a lot of these legislators might just be pro-gun. Mm-hmm. They like firearms, but they don't quite understand the connection between the firearm and the true meaning of the Second Amendment. And so there's a disconnect all the way down here, even in Idaho, where I fear that we're going to have some issues with our Second Amendment rights in the coming year.
Greg, I have maintained for a long time that the first line of defense is you and me as heads of our household. In rural areas, and I live in a very rural area, the county sheriff and the deputies cannot be here possibly for 30 minutes or more to help with a conflagration on my property. So it's up to me, and I will never give up that value of protecting myself and my family, and I think everyone should feel that way.
They should, and people like you and I and many other Idahoans that I've talked to all feel the same way. They understand that mentality. I think it's pretty strong here in Idaho for the most part, other than a lot of the California transplants that keep moving over here in the Treasure Valley. But the police aren't there. I mean, they have that whole motto, serve and protect, but really, the serve might be correct, but the police as an organization were never intended to protect you from anything. They were designed to come in and clean up the mess after it was over. So I think we understand that mentality of, hey, we got to protect ourselves. I'm not going to rely on anybody else to do it for me, because you're right, it can take a long time. Even in urban areas, it still may take 5 or 10 minutes for the police to get there. That's too long.
That's right.
Too long.
Greg, we have a telephone call, caller with a question. If you can't hear it, I'll paraphrase it for you. Go ahead, caller, quickly. Go ahead.
Yes, Greg, on ammunition and the attempts to, squeeze the amount down that we can buy, and then the amount of ammunition that the Homeland Security has bought, and then the restrictions on gunpowder, and then, of course, the potential identification of what the bullet or however that was supposed to be. Can you give us your thoughts on that, and I'll hang up?
Certainly. And again, you can have as many guns as you want. If you don't have the ammunition to load into them, they're pretty much worthless. I mean, they're basically a desk weight at that point. So the effects on ammunition, and I think that's one of the big things they've tried to go at, is the ammunition. Whether that's buying up ammunition so that it depletes the civilian capability to get some, or whether it's, again, going back to the banks and insurance companies and saying, hey, you know what, you guys are a high-risk company, these firearms companies are high risk because of their firearms and ammunition, and, so they'll lose business that way. I've also believed PayPal is now started to restrict who can buy firearms and ammunition through their website or using the PayPal service. So, ammunition, if you don't have it, then the whole, it's worthless not to have a gun without ammunition.
Absolutely.
Certainly, restricting reloading material as well as new ammunition has caused a significant concern.
Greg, I'm going to ask your indulgence and patience to just stay on the line for a minute. I've got to do a commercial break. We're talking to Greg Pruitt, Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. Stand by. I'll be right back with you. First of all, a weather forecast brought to you by Scarro's Meats over in Jerome, 331 North Road in Jerome, selling taste one bite at a time. Don't forget they've got the marinated tri-tips for any occasion, along with $50 of free meat with the purchase of a new barbecue grill from Scarro's Meats in Jerome, 324-7657. Here now, Michael Rogers weather.
Well, another day of sun. In fact, you're going to have a lot of sun, as I stated yesterday. The next weekend, going into next weekend to next weekend. The day, as far as the temperature is concerned, is going to be in the 80s, but when you get to Thursday, the temperature is in the low 90s, about 91. So enjoy the day, enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you got.
Thank you, Michael. Brought to you by Scarro's Meats, selling taste one bite at a time. 331 North Road, Jerome. The number to call, 324-7657. Don't forget, next Monday, I'm going to be broadcasting live and direct over to Snyder's Surplus over in Rupert. Hey, I'll tell you what, it's going to be a lot of fun. 112 South, 200 West of Rupert, and the new store, new merchandise, and friendly service of Snyder's Surplus. Next Monday, June 16th, from 8 to 11, I'll be broadcasting live and direct. You be there. We're on the phone with Greg Pruitt with the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. Greg, another worry that I have, and I think everybody is worried about this administration, the Obama administration, and their gun control, but also there's another entity involved, and that's the United Nations. I would imagine you sound like you're really well-read and well-versed on what's happening. The new treaty with the United Nations makes it even scarier for me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm sure you're referring to the UN Small Arms Treaty.
Yes.
That was another really big issue that was very difficult to bring light to because a lot of people didn't really know about it, and we tried to bring as much light to it as we could. I know the national organizations, NRA, the GOA, and some of the others were aware of what was going on. But yeah, the UN Small Arms Treaty would have... It's a disaster because it would really limit, eventually, how the firearms were moved between states and between countries. And the big concern was that, it's a small arm. They're not talking about tanks, planes, and jets and all that kind of stuff. They're talking about literally the arms that you're going to be holding in your hands. And their big thing was they were trying to prevent illegal trafficking of firearms and so on and so forth. But it was really essentially a backdoor to more gun control, more ways for them to take that firearm and say, well, you can't move this type of firearm from this state to this state, or from this country to this country. And I know, we've been fighting it tooth and nail to make sure that thing is not ratified. I don't think it will be ratified, but they have been pushing it for the last at least year and a half.
What would you tell my audience? We've only got a couple of minutes left here, Greg, but what would you tell my audience about getting involved, joining organizations like yours? Give some information as to what you think the general public should do to make sure their voices are heard.
Well, again, we have a Facebook page, Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. We have a website, which is www.idahosaa.org. It's down for maintenance for the next couple of days, but we'll have that back up and running. Anybody can email me at idaho2aa@gmail.org. Any of those, and we can give you all sorts of ideas and helpful hints on how to help out and how you can make your voice heard a little bit stronger. One big concern, Zeb, that a lot of Idaho citizens aren't aware of yet is there is a movement right now to get rid of the standard permit. So we would only be left with the enhanced permit.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously basically that's a big gun control measure for the state of Idaho. Because if you take away that standard permit, you're restricting even more people who don't maybe want to go through the enhanced permit to get those extra few states. So there's a push right now by Sheriff Rainey up here in the Treasure Valley and others to make that happen. That can't happen. And they're already talking about making the enhanced permit more enhanced, adding more training, adding more costs, and so forth. We are very concerned. Our group is hell-bent on passing constitutional carry, which means you have the right to carry, you don't need a stinking permit. So we are in a very, very serious situation right now where in the next 2 years, we may be going down the path of more gun control here in Idaho, and that's really sad.
You mentioned a sheriff up there in that area. Why? Why is that sheriff and his department, why are they pushing for that?
Well, my personal opinion is he's all about control. Sheriff Rainey, and if you talk to any of the other sheriffs, they'll know exactly who you're talking about. To me, he's very power hungry. He wants control. I think his ultimate goal is to get to a situation where, like in some states, the sheriff has a say in whether or not you get a firearm. It's not just a shall issue state. I think he would like to get to that point. This would be a really big step towards going to that, because the more training and fees and all this other stuff that the government requires, the less people are going to carry. And I think that's his ultimate goal. I don't know his true motives. That's just my personal opinion. But we've got to put a stop to it. We've got to put an end to it.
I travel extensively, Greg, and one of my worries is always breaking down in the middle of the night, whether it's in New Mexico or Colorado or whatever. And I would like to see a uniform concealed weapons permit that would be good in all 50 states. Is that ever going to be a possibility?
I highly doubt it, just because you get into some 10th Amendment issues and stuff at that point. But I don't think they'll ever go down that route. It's possible. My concern is if they do a universal permit over 50 states, who's running that program?
Mm-hmm.
Is the federal government running that program? And at what cost? If it's a one permit system, and ideally that's great, but my fear is, the wrong people get a hold of that program, and it turns into, well, Zeb, in order for you to get your permit now, you're going to have to renew every 3 years. You're going to have to pay $500. You're going to have to do A, B, C, D, E, and F just to get your permit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a really big danger of going down that route. Obviously, it would be nice to carry everywhere we go. But my ultimate goal would be to go back to the real Second Amendment, where you carry anywhere. As long as you're not a convicted felon and a violent person, you can carry without a permit because you don't need a permit.
Absolutely.
Was for.
Absolutely. Greg, you got a promise to come back on the program again. Idaho Second Amendment Alliance. Greg Pruitt, thank you very much for being on the show this morning, and I'll keep in touch with you, okay?
Thanks for you, Zeb, anytime.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Quite a spokesman for the Idaho Second Amendment Alliance, Greg Pruitt, and I certainly will put his name down to have him back on the air with the likes of other people that we really trust on this program, like Joe Wolverton and others. So stay tuned for more broadcasts with those folks. Hey, don't forget Anthon Darrington Law Office. You better believe it. Brent Anthon, Matt Darrington of Anthon Darrington PLLC at 601 7th Street in Rupert. Number to call, 260-5280. That number again, 260-5280. They are a couple of Declo boys that grew up and now they know the law. They practice law in areas of wills and trusts and estates and farm leases and, of course, family law, adoption. They can help you and they will. Please give them a call, 260-5280. Anthon Darrington PLLC, serving you at 601 7th Street in Rupert. Also, want to tell you about our friends at your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers, all 7 locations with easy credit plans, you better believe it, and free peace of mind tire protection and free lifetime tire and mileage care. They've got the best tire value promise in the industry, and believe me, they've got all the tires with all the different tread designs ready for your vehicles, whether it's your car, your pickup, your SUV, horse trailer, boat trailer, whatever you need tires for, they've got them. And, of course, the best in shocks and struts and front-end alignments and brake service. The best in brake service. Batteries, custom wheels, it's all there at all 7 locations of your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. With Lane and Rupert, Dave on Blue Lakes and Twin, Mike and Buell, Mike and Jerome, the Twist family in Paul, John on Poline in Twin Falls, and Randy on Overland in Burley, your Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers. Let's get Gina on the line here for just a minute. Gina, are you right there?
Yep, I'm here.
As you know, and Gina's been so helpful to us, I've got to take a little run right now up to Boise and see a specialist for my good old back. And so we're going to cut out of here a little bit early, just a couple of minutes to get on the road. Got a 2 o'clock appointment. Look out, here I come. And we want to stress to everybody, tomorrow on the program, we've got Attorney Gail Trotter from back east. She does an excellent job on the program. We've got a gentleman coming on the program to talk about the fake and phoniness of climate change, and then also the Idaho Department of Fish and Game with Kelton Hatch. So all that coming up tomorrow. We'll saddle the horses and start riding at about 8:06 and take all of your phone calls. And remember, the way things were, or the way things ought to be, right here on Zeb at the Ranch. Gina, God bless you. I'm going to leave just a couple of minutes early and start on the road. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Take care.
You too. Drive safe.
Thank you.